take a photo as well.
Not go straight across from you, maybe?
That would be great, actually.
And we have that stand as well. Sure. Yes, because we want photos from around.
Yeah.
Is that all right?
Sure.
Where are we looking?
Yeah, like you said, all in perfectly. 1, 2, 3. And do another one. 1, 2. Should we mix it up?
You want, yeah, no.
Where you are,
We got 3 to choose from, we're good.
Thank you. And yes, you may keep the flat Stanleys because we would like you to take them around and take pictures from wherever you might happen to be in Singapore.
Wow.
Wow.
Amazing.
All right, we have to sit at the. It is actually hard to find words because I'm emotional when you see how much can be done when a community comes together to support schools. So thank you to the 1,000 donors that you mentioned and the 250 or 200 volunteers at HSF that makes this happen. We have so much to be proud of at Hillsborough, and what HSF does makes it happen for the kids. So thank you from the bottom of our hearts. Anybody else? Karen?
I just wanted to thank HSF. I think as Lisa said, we are part of an extraordinary community, and you do start from zero every year, and it is such a huge climb, and just one that is made as a community. And this is not, as we've said before, it is not the icing on the cake, it is the cake itself. It is what makes our district run. It is an essential part of the budget, it's not the extras. I'm just thinking about you adding $100,000, that's a teacher.
Yes.
That is real money, that is not, this is not, this is not just for notebooks. This is the substance that is our district, and I cannot thank you enough. And as I said to someone the other day, it's okay if you don't give it to HSF, but just thank your neighbor, because they did in your child benefits. So thank you so much. So thank you for all the hard work, thank you to all the volunteers, and thank you to for that incredible donation, because that is beyond expectations, so thank you.
I just wanted to add a huge thank you to Maren individually. You've been a superb leader this year. You're also extremely poised, professional, sitting on the front lines with us through many difficult stages. So thank you for that. And also, please extend a huge thank you to your entire team. We all know how hard it is to raise these funds starting from zero every year. And as everyone has said, it's absolutely crucial to our budget. And it really can't be done without a really inspirational leader at the top. So thank you for taking on that role, and we're extremely excited to be working with Laurel next year. So thank you.
I obviously add my thanks, and my only comment is my experience with school districts in towns, it's very natural not to see beyond your borders, because this is what you care about. And people, I just hope people realize there is nothing like this in the state of California.
All right. I don't know where we go from here. You're good. We must press on. Oh, Anthony.
Good luck.
So thank you for joining us here tonight in our boardroom in the district office, and thank you for clicking on this video to learn more about what's going on in the district. And for the benefit of those of you who are joining us through this video chat, I would just like to thank Hillsborough Schools Foundation, who just made the remarkable, amazing, awe-inspiring announcement that they are allocating $3.6 million to the school district, a record-breaking amount. And they've actually even said that on a going forward basis, they want us to budget for $3.45 million, which is, again, well and above what was budgeted last year. So because the people that are clicking on this didn't hear it, can we give a round of applause for them? Hearing this through this video chat, you might want to download the audio from the board meeting, because there was a really moving speech from Marin Macaluso all about HSF and what they do, how they do what they do, and also what they do, as well as some wonderful remarks from our outgoing Associated Parent Group President, Kelly Scandelios. And let's clap for her for the to follow, but I do have some important things, not a little bit, not as exciting, but some important things. So the governor did give his May revision of his budget recently, in May 16th. And there are a few changes that we should be cognizant of. Basically, although the governor's May revision does increase the projected revenue, it also increases the projected expenditures. So in this way, through a little bit of alchemy, to be frank, there's really not a lot more new money coming to programs in the state, including educational programs. The governor does continue to work towards 2 different rainy day funds, one for the rest of the state and one for education in particular. This rainy day fund now has a few different provisos, because there was an agreement amongst the different legislative bodies, which basically ensures that the education rainy day fund won't start to be filled until such a time as other needs have been addressed with education. So that's a significant change. Another significant change is the governor's accelerated path for making good on the California State Teachers Retirement Fund, or CalSTRS. So as you might have been reading, CalSTRS is significantly underfunded. And CalSTRS, by the way, is funded by 3 different bodies. It's funded by teachers, they pay into the system. It's funded by school districts, who pay into the system, and it's funded by the state. So there are 3 payers into the CalSTRS system. But there's not enough money in that system. So the governor in the original budget did say that this is a problem that needed to be addressed. But in his May revise, he says we need to start addressing it now. So even in the 14-15 school year, he suggests additional funds coming from the school district, additional funds coming from the employees, and additional funds coming from the state of California, which was a little bit of a surprise, because we were not hearing that these changes were going to take place in the 14-15 school year. They still might not. This is just a proposal. This is, has to be legislated. But his proposal would say that employers like the Hillsborough City School District would need to increase to 19.1% by 2021 the rate at which we put in for CalSTRS. And that's up from a rate of 8.25%, which is current. That's a very significant increase. There's an increase for employees as well, going to 10.25% eventually, and that's at a current 8%. So what does all this mean? Well, that means that if the governor's proposal is accepted and legislated, then the school district and the employees will have to put in more money towards this retirement system in order to keep it solvent. The state would put in money as well. And there's a little caveat, that's with no extra funding from the state. So we have a new mandate, but with no extra funding. The legislature is also coming up with counter proposals, and there's still a lot of conversation to happen, but this is certainly something that the board should keep tabs on and should be cognizant of as we make budgetary decisions for the school district. Speaking of budgetary decisions, we heard some good news from the Hillsborough Schools Foundation tonight, but there's also continued good news for property values. There's a chart in tonight's board packet that basically says that about February, we were tracking at 3.93% improved property values. And on May 27th, that was up to 6.16% positive property values. And again, a 1% growth is about $128,000 extra for the school district beyond our current level of funding. It's dropped a little bit since then, so this morning it was tracking at 6.14%, so just down a little bit from the high of 6.16%. We continue to have 4% in our budget because until June 30th, as we've seen, it can go up, it can also go down. So we'll be looking at this to see what our final number is, but it does look reasonable that we should be receiving more revenues than are currently in our budget. The question is how much more. It seems like a reasonable expectation. I'd like to say that the Yosemite trip was extremely successful for students. With a lot of hard work from the administrators and the staff members and the parent volunteers that were there. The students participated in wonderful hikes and nature experiences and leadership experiences, but it wasn't without some challenges. As I reported to the parents and to the board, there was a rock fall in Yosemite. There was even a minor earthquake in Yosemite. So it is a good reminder to us that we need to take our safety protocols very seriously. We need to always be looking at, are we doing everything in our power to be safe for our students? So it was a very successful trip, but it still is a trip that requires a whole lot of planning and attention, and I'd like to thank the administrators for doing such a good job on that trip. Speaking of trips, our 8th graders, or many of them, are at Washington, D.C. right now. They successfully landed on time and without major incidents. I've been receiving lots of pictures and tweets from DC, and it was really moving to see a series of pictures at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier where the Crocker student body and staff members present placed a wreath, and it was very moving by the pictures. And they were able to visit the new Martin Luther King Memorial that is a very recent addition to Washington, D.C. So we continue to get good reports, and it looks like so far the trip has been very successful. And again, kudos to Catherine, who's not here tonight because she's in Washington, D.C., to Chris Collins, Susan Frankel, and all the teachers and administrators at Crocker who helped make that a success, and we'll still cross our fingers that it remains successful as we go forward here. I also would like to thank Lisa Eyre for inviting the administrators and the board members to the HTA CSEA retirement. It was fun, it was moving, and as we said earlier, it was wonderful to be included, and it really felt like we were all part of one big family. So thank you for all that hard work and for including us in the fun. It was wonderful. I'd like to also state some success that the Communications Committee continues to be very focused on making sure that we're doing everything that we can to communicate effectively with our staff members and our community members. And one innovation that we're working on right now is putting our board packets online. As you know, we already have our agendas online. We have video chats like this online. We have the audio from the board meetings online. This year we have our board policies online, and they're fully searchable. And now we're working on getting our entire board packet online, so then people don't have to print it out, people can download it instantaneously. After Nicole Balcells, who's a staff member in our office, researched very thoroughly about 8 different companies. She met with Don Geddes, Karin Hardy, and myself on these companies. And after a lot of research, it really does seem like Agenda Online through CSBA is the best product. It's also the most commonly used product, but we didn't just choose that because it was commonly used. We really went down and see what are the features that we need. That is also being a beta version is being tested right now that's new and improved, and we're gonna get a 50% discount by going that route, but we found that out after we went forward. So it looks like sometime in the next several months, you know, maybe in the August board meeting, September board meeting perhaps, we'll have all of our packet online, so another success for our communications team. I'd like to thank all of the teachers and staff members who made the open houses at all 4 of our schools and all 3 of our preschools a resounding success. The high quality student work was in evidence. I paid a specific attention to the writing, and I was in one first grade class, for instance, where I could have sworn I was in a 3rd grade class with the high quality writing that I saw. But all the way up TK through 8, there were really wonderful conversations, which was, I think, the best thing to see, where it was teachers and parents and students all talking in collaboration, which I think is a hallmark of our success. So thank you to all the wonderful teachers and administrators, staff members for making that such a success. Also a success is our tech challenge with our 5th graders. I got an opportunity to see the West Tech Challenge in practice yesterday, and the South one today, and I think North is in a few days. Is that next week or?
This Friday.
Friday, so I'll see North as well. It's a great way to see the essential outcomes in action with our 5th graders, and if you haven't gotten a chance, I think it's a great thing to take a look at if you haven't done so. And finally, I mentioned HSF at the beginning, and so I will mention them at the end here. Along with the amazing donations and along with the stewardship shown by Marin and her team, I'd like to say what a lot of fun I had at all of the events, and that was capped off by a really successful fun run this year where all my family participated, and so it's a great way to give back, but also a way to bring the community together. So on that note, I'd like to thank HSF, and I will be happy to answer any questions the board has. Well, we saw some pictures in the slideshow. Yeah, the town had a very successful parade. This year they asked me to do a little announcing on one of the corners of Eucalyptus, and so that was a new adventure, and they were very good stewards of North School. There was some ponies, and there was a petting zoo, and we were all crossing our fingers, and you know what? They turned out to do really well with our school, and they had a little bit of cleanup the next day, but they did that very successfully, and it was wonderful for the town to invite board members to take part, and all of our schools were there, our 2 schools, so another successful event. Thanks for the cue.
Yeah, no, it was a lot of fun. Our Grand Marshal this year was Lester Chun. And it's always fun to attend that event because there are so many key members from the schools and volunteers and various children that participate and listen to all of us. So it was a good time had by all. Any comments or questions for Anthony from members of the public on his report? Okay, thank you very much. All right, item 8.6, dedication of Crocker Band Room, discussion and action.
So many members of our parent community have recommended, including Patsy, who I think is here at our last board meeting under public comment, have asked me, asked Catherine, asked the board members to consider dedicating the Crocker Band Room in honor of Lester Chun. And I thought a lot about how to make a recommendation on this point because it's not something a school district should do lightly. You know, this room is going to be used by somebody else, and that person's not going to be named Lester Chun. And so, you know, that does have a certain message to the next person. But after a lot of after a lot of reflection, I should say, if Lester Chun doesn't deserve to have the band room named after him and dedicated to him, I don't really know any learning space in the district that should have this honor. In 33 years, he built that program from nothing. He got a lot of support, as he'll be the first one to tell you. He was supported by parents, supported by donations, supported by maxi grants, supported by boards over the years. But he built it primarily with his blood, sweat, and tears. And I think that his storied career is really deserving of one of the highest honors that a Board of Education can bestow. He helped design that room. He spent a lot of time in researching the acoustics of the room itself. So along with building the program, he actually had a lot to do with the physical space. And so after a lot of reflection, I really do enthusiastically recommend that you bestow upon Lester Chun the honor of dedicating the Crocker Band Room to him for all of his efforts.
Thank you, Anthony. Are there any questions from the board for Anthony about his recommendation? Any comments about this item in particular?
I just have a question on what would the process be, or any cost associated?
Yeah, so there is a cost, and the rooms have been dedicated in the past in this district. Usually what happens is the board designates a subcommittee to talk through what would be the wording. This would be a permanent plaque, so the wording is particularly important. So a subcommittee would be designated. That subcommittee would be responsible for obviously working with Mr. Chun to make sure it's something that he feels is good and he feels comfortable with. Also might reach out to parent leaders that have been involved with the band in the past, or other faculty members at Crocker. In terms of the cost, the permanent, in order to have a very classy permanent plaque, it is a cost associated with, into the low thousands of dollars to have a real, something that is permanent, something that is really classy. But I think the highest cost is there is some time associated with it, and it does take time to have this be created and things like that. And then there would maybe be a ceremony that we would ask Lester to come, and whether that ceremony is bigger or small is partly up to him and to the subcommittee. So that's the process that has been used in the past.
Questions or comments? Ray?
When this was raised at the last board meeting, let's just say this, there's a rule sort of not to do these kinds of things, because it's a slippery slope, and I thought, like you, Anthony, long and hard about this, and for every rule there's an exception. And if Lester Chun is not an exception in this case, I don't know who is. So, I support this.
There's no other. I just wanted to lend my voice to this. I gave Lester's retirement speech at the board staff appreciation recognition tribute party a couple weeks ago, and so I spent a lot of time putting together my remarks and spending time with Lester's career and talking to people that have worked with him over the last 30 years here in the district. And everything Anthony says is true. What he's built for us is a lasting legacy of music. There are Facebook pages from old band classes. People occasionally check in. I mean, there's a real connection with students. They still come back to see him. He encourages all of his graduates to go on to continue their music. Whether or not they do, they still come back and see Lester. And I agree, dedication is one of those things that we should do seldom, because it is, it's a big commitment, it's a long one, and you want to make sure that the history is deserving. Very special set of circumstances, but as Greg and Anthony both said, I'd be hard pressed to find any more special set than what Lester's done for the district. So. Is there any public comment on this before I ask the board for a motion? Yes, Patsy, wait, let's get you a microphone.
I want to mention one more
Wait,
time.
let's get you a microphone. There you go. Thank you.
Hi, I want to mention one more time. Remember 2005, Lester Chun got the cancer. He never took a 1 day off. He come back to the school and teach every single day. So I think he deserves for everything. The only thing he cutoff is Disneyland trip, that's it, for 2006. And 2007, he bring the Disneyland trip again. Every single morning for Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday morning, sectional, I expect there's a cancellation. Never happened. So my son cannot sleep in. So I think if he had a cancer, he come to the school before 7:15. All the kids to support him, the whole district to support him. He deserved for everything. That's it.
Thank you. Any other comments? I'd like to make a motion that this board honor Lester Chen by dedicating the property in his honor.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion's carried. Anthony, we will need to put together some sort of a committee, as you mentioned, to walk through these. I did talk with Mary Ellen, there's a lot of things we want to make sure that we do, logistics of the wording and the design, even the location and placement and how you put it on there. So we'll manage that. And then I think there's also the question of how we want to communicate this to our honoree and his community. Did you have any ideas in that regard?
Well, it depends if we want this to be any kind of surprise, and if we want it to be any kind of surprise, perhaps we should not talk about it here.
Okay.
We could,
Excellent. The code of silence.
if the board so wishes, we can designate a superintendent committee with 2 board members and empower those 2 board members to work, with parent band leaders, with staff members, as I've mentioned, to figure out a way to do this in a way that would be as Lester would want, and perhaps with an element of surprise as well.
So don't post the audio right away.
Perhaps.
So everybody in this room, this is kind of a joint secret here. Let's see if we can keep it quiet for a little bit, okay? Thank you.
If we can do that now.
Yeah, is there
I'm sorry.
any volunteers? Okay, Lynn, Ann,
Musical.
Greg? Okay, Lynn and Greg, thank you.
Thanks. All right. Item 8.7. Begin by adjourning to public hearing for the purpose of establishment of our parcel tax for fiscal year 2014-15. Anthony?
So this is opportunity for members of the public to speak on the issue of the setting of the parcel tax rate for fiscal year 2014-15. I will note that in the memorandum that follows, we are not projecting or suggesting an increase at this time, but this is an opportunity for members of the public to speak towards the setting of the parcel tax rates.
Are there any members of the public that wish to address the board setting the parcel tax rate? Okay, hearing none, adjourn to regular session. Anthony, item 8.8.
That's
I'm sorry. Questions?
Okay, we're here tonight to ask that you approve the rate for 2014-15. It is flat compared to this year. Every year we have the opportunity to increase the parcel tax rate based on a couple of factors. One is the California per capita personal income or inflation rate. That came out to be a negative 0.23%. And also the percentage change in the district's ADA. We are looking at a little bit of a decrease in ADA of 0.58%. So the net effect of those 2 factors did not result in an increase to the parcel tax rate. So we're asking that the parcel tax rate for next year be the same as this year.
Thank you. Are there any questions from board members? I had one.
the ADA is calculated based on the enrollment at the time I do the calculation. So it's an estimated number for 2014.
Got it, okay, that's why we're going down, because I'm thinking this year is going here.
Right, but it's a number that I use at the time the calculation is done.
Okay. And the July 1 adjustment date is for this year or for next year?
For July 1, 2014, for 14-15.
Okay, great. Any more questions? Any comments from the public? Is there a motion?
Sure, I move that we pass resolution 2014-04, establishing a flat rate of $607.66 for next year.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? I'm sorry, that's right, roll call vote.
Greg Dennis,
Aye.
Vanessa Smith,
Aye.
John Geddes,
Aye.
Karen Hodder,
Aye.
Margaret Kelley.
Aye.
Thank you. All right, 8.9, LCAP.
As you know, the Local Control Funding Formula, or LCFF, is a new funding model for the state of California. While this new funding model will bring additional funds to many school districts, especially those that have high numbers of English learners, high numbers of low socioeconomic students, and high numbers of foster youth, we, as a Hillsborough City School District, as a basic aid or community funded district, will not receive additional funding under the Local Control Funding Formula, unfortunately. But even though that's the case, we still need to comply with the new regulations of the LCFF. One of those new regulations is the Local Control Accountability Plan, or LCAP. The LCAP is designed to bring a school district together to set goals and metrics about how they're going to get closer to meeting the 8 state priorities that the state of California designates as being very important for us as a state. And those are listed under page 27. For the last few months, the board has, and the public have been working on the Local Control Accountability Plan. On February 11th, we approved an LCAP timeline to fulfill these elements. In order to write or draft the Local Control Accountability Plan, every school site council was asked for input. The Associated Parent Group, the Hillsborough Schools Foundation, Roundtable, where we bring together all the parents and administrator and union representatives. The unions themselves in separate meetings were, we solicited input from. We solicited input in public meetings. We solicited input through email and through a sharing of drafts. And we listed all sorts of different priorities we could go forward with under the 8 state priorities. We talked to student councils. Actually, that was an addition that the board wanted us to talk with the students themselves. So I actually had the pleasure of talking with the executive boards from each of our 4 schools, so I talked to the students as well. And the staff members were consulted during meetings in addition to those. So after all those folks were given a chance for input, we created a draft. That draft was put out on the website. It was also sent out, pushed out to parents and community members for input and feedback. Once the feedback was received, we did another draft. Modell, Marlo Anderson, Elaine Ogawa, and I then took that draft to the county. And the reason the county is, even though this is a state report, the adjudicators of this report is a county team. So the state doesn't say yay or nay on the report, it's the county that's empowered to do that. So we were actually able to talk with the folks who directly will decide whether our LCAP is compliant. And we were very heartened to hear that it was the best LCAP that they had received so far, so that made us feel really good. But even so, they had some feedback as well, mostly in terms of having more clarity. They wanted to make sure that even specific pieces sort of stood on their own, so that if somebody just wanted to take one piece and just read that, it would tell the story, and you wouldn't have to read the whole 43 pages in order to really get the meat of each individual section. That was the biggest part of their feedback. So another draft was created, which was also shared on the email. Tonight, we are presenting this for a public hearing. Now, it's a little confusing because the hearing talks about the approval of the LCAP, and it is a public hearing for that purpose, but we're not actually asking for approval at this time. The rules of the LCAP require that a public meeting be held the meeting before it is approved. That would be tonight, so that it's one more opportunity for the public to say, hey, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? So that's what we're going to do very soon when we adjourn to public hearing. Before we get to that, I just want to sort of make sure everybody's oriented to the document. If you'll indulge me, I won't belabor this, but just do it very briefly. We start out with a narrative that talks about who we are as a school district, and we put in some of the information about the district. That includes talking about the essential outcomes. We put that right up front as something that we feel very passionately about. That's followed by a repeat of our HCSD Forward Collaborative Visioning Plan that really dovetailed nicely into the LCAP. We used a lot of the ideas from HCSD Forward in the creation of this LCAP, as well as the LCAP timeline that I've previously referenced that starts on page 7 and goes forward for another few pages. Then we talk about how we involved everybody, and I've already glossed that. We've involved them in lots of different ways, in lots of different forms. So that's on page 13 and 14. And then we get into all the different metrics that were used in order to make our conclusions. And you see, starting on page 17, about 28 or so different reports and pieces of data that we looked at in arriving at this LCAP. And that's repeated in several different forms. And then in page 20, you see the goals themselves, which I'll enumerate very quickly. We want to make sure we have math textbooks that are aligned to the Common Core state standards, as well as aligned to English language learners and students that have been redesignated as fluent English proficient in the area of math. Similarly, in Goal B, we want to adopt materials for the Common Core in English language arts. In C, coming off of HCSD Forward, is really to work on our wireless technology in terms of infrastructure, professional development, and devices, and I think we're well on our way to the goal there. Item D is to complete a needs assessment survey that is very comprehensive in the next school year. Item E is, again, coming from HCSD Forward and bringing world language back into our elementary schools and having multiple world languages at our middle school. In F is implementing the teacher evaluation system that's already been approved by the board and by the teachers. In Goal G, it's to look at special populations. This is again right from HCSD Forward. We would like to start with the gifted and also start with students that have emotional or behavioral issues, so we're already working on that goal. In H, it's a goal towards creating a comprehensive system for professional growth. And in I, we want to, this is again from HCSD Forward, promote a district culture of nimbleness, of creativity. And then we have some aspirational goals, also from HCSD Forward, about making sure our students are entering a world that is interconnected and collaborative. So we want them to demonstrate through their work products a perspective and appreciation of multiple world cultures. So that's a lot of different goals all at once. And then the following pages, starting on page 32, it says how we're going to get there. What steps are we going to take in each of these goals? How much money it will cost? If it does cost money, where will the funding come from? So that we make, we're not just having aspirational goals, but we're really putting some meat into it. So the LCAP is now in a pretty final draft status. But again, after answering questions from the board, we'll adjourn to public hearing so that we'll have yet another opportunity for the public to make comments so that I would bring back an LCAP for the next board meeting, hopefully that will be approved before the budget's approved. Be happy to answer any questions or your comments this time.
Thank you, Anthony. Any trustees have any questions? Karen?
I'd like to thank Anthony for putting this together. It was a big undertaking. It was one that we have to do, but is not one that we benefit from. But the main benefit came from the process that you put together, which was hugely collaborative. We spoke to a lot of different groups, gave lots of opportunity for input, And together it actually forms a really nice document of all the initiatives across the district. So thank you for putting so much time and for getting the accolades of having the best LCAP with the least return. So thank you.
Marky?
I was gonna say something similar to thank Anthony for all of his hard work. What I like about this, I know this was mandated and it was kind of another thing to do, but it really has encapsulated a lot of the great work that we'd already started, and it lays out a great plan for next year and beyond. So I think it's a great sort of guiding document that will be useful, even though it was mandated by the state. So I think that's great, and I had already asked Anthony my minute questions earlier today, so I'm all set.
Thanks, Martin. Greg?
I want to echo the thanks, also add, in terms of the relevancy to our district, a lot of other districts, the LCFF is intended to sort of redistribute funds based on student demographics, and they have to begin targeting certain populations, and they have to set goals, and they have to show money going to certain purposes, and not that we would ever do this, but just because we're required to do this doesn't dictate the level of seriousness that we go about it, because it really doesn't impact us. And this one was taken very seriously, and I appreciate that.
So I'll just add a big well done and include Elaine and Modell, who I know also had a great deal of hands in the process, because I can see your handiwork all over. And I just want to comment that this was a big squirrely project full of tons of data that really, I'm so impressed with the form in which it's presented. This is actually a usable document. This is something that I will want to put in that big fat LCAP binder that we had when we had our special meeting to go through and board input, and put this at the top of it so that we can see all the data that went into creating this. So I want to thank you for that. The other thing that I wanted to ask about is when we gave comment, and I think this is probably how it happened for a lot of the other groups that you consulted, we created these laundry lists of everything that had been done in the district or was being done currently. And I have to tell you, just that process alone of being able to catalog all this was encouraging and wonderful and really powerful in the sense that there is so much good learning already going on in the district, that setting goals to advance on that and capitalize on it is an exciting thing. It's not just pushing paper for the state, which is kind of what we had expected initially with this program. So I hope, because I know that that data is not sort of as expressed in here, that we've kept it someplace for bragging rights and elucidation.
So originally when we presented the document to the county, we included that as an appendix because we, like you, Lynn, thought that it was a very rich part of the process. And they said, yeah, that's great, but it's not really appropriate to contain in the LCAP. But they also agreed that that was a document that we can and should return to make sure that we're sort of being responsive to all those different things that were recommended by different members of the community. So we do retain that.
Good.
We have that all digitally, and it is something that we continue to look to be informed.
It could be put on the website. Great.
Anthony, you just prompted another question, and this is the cart before the horse because we haven't approved this yet, but there is, once we approve our LCAP, there are ongoing review modification requirements of sort. Can you review that real quick?
So there's an annual review process. As you may recall, the LCAP is intended to be a 3-year plan, but with annual reviews yearly. And so about this time every year, we're going to, about this time we have to approve, so we'll have to start well before that. We'll be looking, did it turn out that our goals are the right goals? Do we want to continue to move forward with them? Is there any adjustments? We can create new goals even though it's an annual review. And then every 3 years, it's really a, hey, let's take stock again. Let's start, not start from scratch, but let's really go in a more robust, comprehensive way. But there'll be an annual review where we'll say, you know, did we spend the amount of money that we said we were gonna spend? Did we spend less? Did we spend more? Did we meet the goals that are labeled for each year, or do we have to adjust that? We did some things more quickly, we're slower on certain things, so we'll be forced, and I actually think it's a good process, to return to this work at least once a year, if not more, as part of LCAP.
Any other comments from the trustees? Okay, then, I'm going to go to 8.10 and adjourn to the public hearing and invite members of the public that are with us this evening to comment if they have any comments or questions. Is there anyone that would like to address the board on LCAP? Okay. Hearing none, I will adjourn and move on to 8.11, which is our 2014-15 preliminary budget. Lynn?
What you have before you is the preliminary budget for 2014-15, and I'll just summarize briefly some of the documents that you'll be looking at. For the schedule that's dated June 3rd today, I have the 13-14 estimated actual. That is the latest look at what we currently have for actuals and estimating one more month of business. The only thing that I might change in 13-14 is we have not used any of the Prop 39 funds. So that's $100,000 that's unspent, so that will go into a reserve of the ending balance. So instead of a $279,000 gain on the year, it'll be $379,000. So 14-15, the preliminary budget, as Anthony mentioned, I have built into the secured property taxes 4% increase. We might see an increase as much as 6%, which will probably be added, I think, at first interim. I don't think we would want to change the adopted budget at this time. For state funding, two items that will continue is we do have the LCFF calculated amount, which is the minimum that we would receive from the state, $172,000. That was based on the categorical we received in 2012. Also continuing is the education protection account, $298,000. Those two items will continue. We will lose the one-time only, what's that? Let's see, the Prop 39 monies, I did not build that in, and also the Common Core State Standard funds, which was a total of $404,000. And then I will be reflecting the change to the foundation's contribution to the district, and happily do that. Moving on to expenses for salaries. Most of the salaries just have a COLA, a step and column increase. There was a COLA just for administrators that was agreed to last year. The other thing that has been reflected is all of the programming increases that were approved by the board. We have an additional 3.75 FTE for teachers, and we also have a decrease of 0.75 FTE for the technology specialists. Other changes that I've done to health and welfare, not health and welfare, for benefits, sorry. STRS is at 9.5%. PERS is at 11.771%. Workers' comp did decrease by 0.38%. So as of 2014-15, we are programmed at whatever the governor had at his May revise, and then what the PERS board has approved for the CalPERS rate. The rest of the items for the 4,000 and the 5,000, it mainly reflects, the technology hardware replacements that were approved in the technology plan. We did move the dollars from the technology specialists that we're saving in salaries and benefits down to, contracted services for additional tech support. The other thing I wanted to mention was because of the technology plan, we are planning to use some of the plan deficit, spending that we had set aside in the reserve. And you can see on the multi-year projection how much that is decreasing over the course of the years, the multi-years. And also, one other thing I wanna mention for the multi-years is the county office has recommended that we utilize the governor's May revised proposal for CalSTRS. And so the option was either to build it into expenditure or to set aside a reserve. So for 15-16 and 16-17, part of it is in the expenditures and part of it is reported as part of the reserves. The other thing I wanted to mention was in your packet also, there is the LCFF calculations, which kind of looks like the revenue limit calculation. We go through that exercise. We will not receive any of the LCFF funding except for the $172,000 that was categorical funds. And we are over, or the excess property taxes is well over $6 million over the calculated LCFF.
Right.
So this is how it is looking probably for the adopted, but I will be making slight modifications till the next meeting.
Other questions? Greg?
Lynn, could you clarify for me the education protection account? You explained it here, I think, but the lifespan of it, and then it goes down from 200 to 166. What's happening there?
Okay, so at the end of December, the increase in sales tax ends. So it's a 0.25 decrease in the sales tax, but the
Prop
state.
30.
Prop 30.
Okay.
And then, at the end of December 2018, that income tax rate will go back down. So we'll see a further reduction. So that'll be the end of Prop 30.
So there'll be no more
Prop 30. after-
education, no more education protection account
Correct,
after, what, December 18th?
correct.
On page 81, and these are just clarification questions, if you want to look at them and tell me later, that's fine. Page 81 of the packet. You mentioned, I was trying to follow because of so many things the board has done with technology and whatnot. You mentioned 3.75 FTE additional,
Correct.
and then here, when I looked at,
The difference?
it's 4.6 FTE.
Okay.
Is that any?
Well, in 13-14, we lost a teacher at North because she went on leave and we just never replaced her with a positioned teacher. So we're making that up in 14-15.
So
Or
that's the
1.0.
additional one, okay.
Right. And then as the year goes on and some teachers go on unpaid leave of absence, the budget is adjusted to reflect the time lost when they're on unpaid leave. So that's why you may see, instead of 1.0 for one teacher, it may drop down to a 0.9 something.
On page 83, I think just one other question. I was just on category 43, materials and supplies, line, count number 4410. I was just wondering why the estimated actuals were 327 and the preliminary budget is 545.
That's where you'll see the technology hardware coming into play in 14-15.
The technology purchases that we made.
Right.
So that's where it shows up, that's what I
Right.
thought.
That's all that equipment. to their target state funding. And so, they're not sure how after that date, funding will happen.
So just wondering about that line item, because there's nothing there now in the fair share, because it's built into the LCFF calculation, right?
Right. It reduces,
Because we used to have the 886,000 there. So it's my own clarification.
it is there, it is reported. The reduction, it's 800,
What page are you on, like?
I'm trying to find it. So on page 103, the fair share reduction is at 854,482.
Okay, but on the high level sheet, it doesn't show up there.
No,
Yeah.
it doesn't. Because it just shows the net 172.
Just a quick question. Can you explain a little bit about how the STRS, how we're gonna fund that? You counting it as an expense and then partly in reserves, do we have a formula for that, or what's it gonna look like? Cause I can see the numbers here.
Okay, so when you're looking on the multi-year on page 77,
Yes.
2014-15, I have built in as expense the 9.5, so we're fine there. It's
Okay.
part of the benefit line.
Right,
In 15-16 and 16-17, I used for the STRS calculation,
Oh, here we go.
10.25. So 10.25 of whatever the May revise said is built already into the expenses in the benefit line.
okay,
So the difference between what was said in the May revise versus what I have in the expenses is now in a reserve, a set aside,
got it, okay, so if they take it all the way up, we plan for it.
as part of, yeah, it'll be covered by part of the.
It's still
ending balance.
politically being discussed, we don't know what's gonna happen.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so you'll see it as one of the items
Right.
down here as part of the ending balance.
The proposals from the legislature is to move to the same point within the same number of years, but to take the first few years slower than the governor is recommending. So this would be in my view, looking at the politics of it, this would be the most aggressive
Okay,
STRS, because the governor's proposal is the most aggressive. It could get better than this from our perspective as a
Right.
district, than this shows.
okay. Yeah, it's a lot of money, and then I look at this number every year, which is the OPEB contribution to Fund 20. You're not? I can't help myself. It's $330,000, and I wondered, what is our current balance and what's our target at this point for funding? I don't know.
It's 660,000.
That's our ending balance.
So we have about 660,000,
Okay,
and the target is about 2.6 million.
okay, we still have a way to go. It is a good start. Greg, it's all you. Okay, are there any other questions? Okay, then, hearing none from the board, I will open the public hearing, 8.12. Are there any members of the public who would like to address the board on the adoption of the 2014-15 budget, which will take place next year? Yes, Pearl. Michael.
Is the microphone available?
Oh, I'm sorry, next meeting. Spoke. Not next year. For the purpose of audio, it's important to get those things right. Thank you, Greg.
Good evening. For the purpose of record, Dr. Pearl Wu, 570 Pullman Road. Question for Elaine regarding the 15-16 budget. Thank you so much for the diligent efforts that you and the board have put forward to ensure that we have basically fiscal responsibility. So I'd like to loop back to the capital appreciation bonds that was incurred as a debt obligation for our district from 2011. And we understand that for the first 5 years, there is basically no payment for it. And we also understand that as such, it may not be included in our budget for 2015, 2016. Could you first clarify whether or not that debt is included? And also, in terms of the actual calculation, for our budget of $22 million a year, our understanding is that the property values must be at a 6% steady worth in terms of its value, if you will, in order for us to meet the trajectory so that in 5 years, let's say 2016, when we are responsible as a district to pay for this debt obligation, and the fact that by 2045, the $20 million is going to be a debt obligation of about $140 million. For those of us who are property tax owners and payers of this district, we would like to be able to be proactive and somehow ensure that all spare money that we have can somehow be put towards a nice glide path for us to mitigate that 7 times inflated, if you will, maturity of the $22 million from 2011. By the time we get to 2045, it will be about $140 million. So the question is, are we able to put money aside to be able to mitigate that 7 times burden? Thank you.
Are there any other comments, questions? Okay, hearing none, I'm gonna close the public hearing and allow Elaine to respond if she wishes.
Okay, so the school district did benefit from the bond money that was collected. However, the repayment of the bonds is not through the school district funds. It is money collected by the tax collector from homeowners. So all you would see in the district financials is in the audited financial statements where they do present the information regarding the bonds, the liability of the bonds, and also what was paid off in a particular year for the bonds. You mentioned that when we went out for the bonds, we estimated that there would be a 6% growth in assessed valuation to cover the payment of the bonds. That is true that at the time when we go out to sell the bonds, there is a forecast of property growth. But when it comes to actually paying off the bonds and the interest on the bonds, the tax collector knows how much money it needs to collect in any particular tax year. And so they assess it on properties based on the assessed valuation in any given year. So the collection of what is needed is not necessarily based on whatever the assessed valuation growth was. It is whatever it is, that is the base for collection for that year. I don't know if I'm explaining that.
You did a great job.
And the last year's rate that determined this year's tax revenue was, I think, 6.56, and currently we're at 6.14. So we were above last year, and we're slightly above this year, that 6% projection. So that gives you an idea of how we're tracking.
Thank you. Okay. We are on to 8. Oh, I didn't even need to do that, sorry. I'm all excited with the gavels today. 8.13, 2 Iceberg and Son plans, how lovely. Who's going first?
Well, we
Lisa.
have
Or is
2,
it
we have
Mike?
Lisa Air who's set up, and we have Diane.
Go first. You need a mic.
Where's the mic?
You need a mic.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, can't do this without a mic.
Wait, Modell?
Modell first, and then she'll pass.
Tonight you do have 2 before you, and the first one will be from Lisa Air, who is working on developing a Spanish assessment system for us, which has been very, very wonderfully received and very well timed. And Diana Gromette will be talking to you in a little while about the interaction between music and social science, which is also wonderful, and the program she's developed across the both of those things. So the first person to present tonight will be Lisa.
Hola, señoras
There's no amplification,
No
it's just
amplification.
recording.
Voy a hablar con un voz muy alta. Okay, good evening, everyone, and tonight I'm presenting the Spanish assessment system, my plan for this past couple years. So it's something I've been working on for a while. You can go ahead and turn off the lights. And so I want to share a little bit about the program and how it works for the kids. We actually have several people in this room who have their children going through it right now. So you guys know exactly, probably heard from your kids how it's going. So I'm going to start off and talk about my objective, and my plan was to develop a comprehensive, consistent assessment system that accurately determines the placement in Spanish at Crocker. So this is mainly a Crocker program. We are reintroducing Spanish back in the elementary schools, but really this system is mainly for Crocker. But it could expand in the future if we see fit. So one of the things that we do is we need to place new students, either incoming sixth graders who had some Spanish experience. We need to place incoming students into seventh grade, eighth grade. We can't put a brand new student to Crocker, eighth grader, in Spanish 3, which is what we call eighth grade Spanish. Oftentimes they're not ready. However, if they've had some Spanish experience, I've developed a placement test related to the program Realidades that we're using at Crocker in all the grade levels to help determine what is that child's level of Spanish. Should they be in sixth grade level 1, seventh grade level 2, or eighth grade level 3? And we've had kids come in with a lot of Spanish experience previously, and so they've been able to place in the appropriate levels. What do we do with a kid when we have a large group of kids who are in 7th and 8th grade, but they've never had any Spanish? And so often what we've done in the past, and we don't have it this year because we don't have that many students, but we've had like a newcomers class, and that's been successful to help get them. And oftentimes when they take that newcomers class, it gets them, ready for Spanish in high school. The placement test that I do for the new kids has a reading component, writing, listening, and verbal as well. The big deal is going on right now, where I'm testing the kids for outgoing Spanish 1 and Spanish 2. The biggest deal is the Spanish 2 going into Spanish 3 because we have 2 programs. So first talking about Spanish 1, that's our 6th grade program typically. Right now we have a couple 7th graders in that class as well because they came to Crocker, they didn't have any Spanish, so one grade level apart is not, a big deal. A lot of electives have that where there's 2 grade levels in one class. So what we do is we do a review prior. The 6th graders are going through their review right now, and next week they will take their proficiency. For them, because they're so new to Spanish, it's not really appropriate to have them have like an advanced class, because they just don't know enough to have a totally, an advanced and a regular class. So we have a proficiency to see how they're progressing, to see how our whole program is working, and to see what areas we need to kind of beef up for next year, especially in the review in the fall. Like I talked about, the big deal right now is what a lot of the Spanish 2 kids are going through, and that's the decision for next year. Will they take Spanish 3, regular Spanish 3, which continues the program from Spanish 2, which they're in this year. Spanish 2 is 7th grade, Spanish 3 is 8th grade. Or do they go on to an advanced class? And the goal is to, one, get, of course, the kids to be reading, writing, speaking, getting them more fluent in Spanish. But in relationship to high school, we want them to, the kids who take Spanish 3 and leave Crocker, that they'll be ready for sophomore year Spanish. So they'll be able to skip 1 year of regular high school Spanish if they continue in Spanish. And we have some kids who switch, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that later.
But then the advanced kids, we have a very well put together program. Currently, Mr. McKenzie's teaching that class. We have 2 advanced classes. The most kids we've ever had in advanced Spanish is this year. And I'll show you some numbers in a second. But the Spanish 3 is an accelerated course, and they have to qualify for it. Just because kids might say, oh, I want to do that, doesn't mean they're ready to do that. So that's why we have this comprehensive system. Again, reading component, writing, grammar, vocabulary, speaking. A lot of the kids right now, some of them might have told you, if you have a child at home, say, oh, I'm waiting for Mrs. Ayer to test me in Spanish. Because it takes a while to test a lot of kids verbally when you're doing it one-on-one and you've got 100 and so many kids to test. So we're working on that right now, and all of the data. So the data goes into a Google spreadsheet, and all the students are listed from every single class, and it's shared amongst the Spanish teachers. Google's great at that. And then it'll be shared with Chris and Catherine when the data's ready, and then we can send out the letters to families saying what students have qualified for the advanced level. Like I said, we have lots of factors in the placement. Their trimester grades for the last year have been taken into account, but the proficiency test is the grammar and vocabulary and reading and listening and writing. There's several components that are part of this system, and so we look at it very, very carefully. We don't have like, oh, that's a great kid, we should just let him in. We don't do that. You really have to qualify for it, and it's hard because sometimes there is like, oh, he's going to be so good, and he would try so hard, but you know, from all our years of trying to figure this out, if we look at the data that the kids, you know, how they do on these assessments, it really does pinpoint what kids do the best. And the biggest thing for me is when I talk to Alec McKenzie, and he says, the last couple of years the kids have been so well placed. So for me that means more than, you know, maybe actual numbers when he says the kids are really should be in that class. So that makes me feel good that it seems like the system is working. How do we communicate this with the community? I provided for the more intensive 7th grade proficiency informational letters to parents prior, gave it out a few weeks before. There will be letters of acceptance into the advanced class for those who make it. Now, some parents want to know, you know, if they don't get a letter, they want to know, you know, why didn't my child get a letter? So I've also developed some follow-up letters explaining, giving the specific data, you know, your child, you know, in these areas, these were your child's strengths, but in these areas your child was not quite as strong and showed that really not quite ready for the advanced class. And so typically that, you know, that suffices to have communication either, you know, in letter form, or then we also follow up with a phone call, and in one instance last year we did an additional assessment. But for the most part, everybody was, you know, satisfied as long as they got the, well, what area do we need to work on? So that helped. Now, if there's we don't only use this assessment system to decide, you know, what level they should go up to. Sometimes there are struggling students, a few who, you know, we've tried a lot of intervention during the year, and maybe we just don't feel that child's ready to go to that next level. And that's when we, you know, this is not a time for a letter. It's time to sit down with the parent and the child and talk about what would be the best thing. And every child is different in this case, so I don't want to say, you know, the blanket statement, but typically a one-on-one conference or bringing in an administrator and conferencing about that student. Sometimes it's really easy, sometimes it's a harder decision, but typically having not only the grades and the Power School grades and all that, but having those assessments and seeing how, you know, the average is doing and seeing where the struggling child is doing, you know, it's easier to make the decision when you have that that good data. So, one of the things, part of my assessment, is information that I think is helpful for the Spanish team, but I think it's also helpful for Crocker teachers, and then even for the district, because HCSD Forward has been looking at world language and what languages kids are taking and what languages are offered in the high schools. So on my Lisa Ayer webpage, there's some information about, I gave all of the 8th graders, the graduating 8th graders, except a few who are absent, this 5-question survey, and asking where are you going to school next year? Are you going to go to public or private? I didn't ask specific schools because there are so many, but just kind of knowing the difference between public and private. I think still a few are waiting to find out. And then what world language do you plan to take in high school is important for us to know. And now all these kids, most of these kids, these weren't just Crocker Spanish students, these were all Crocker, because there are several Crocker 8th graders who don't take Spanish this year. But most of them do, because that's the only world language that's offered this year. So, so 72% of the kids decided that they were going to stick with Spanish, and 14% were going to move over to Mandarin, and 3% were going to move to French, and then the other was 11%. And you say, well, what's that 11%? Well, if you look at the high schools, and I have an attachment on my webpage that talks about the major high schools that most of our kids go to, public and private, and there are a lot of languages that are offered. So for me to break that down, it would have been a really big, it would have been a big, list, and then it would have had, you probably would have seen like 2%, 2%, 1%, some are taking sign language, some are, so we still see like the bulk of the kids, 86% of the kids are taking the 2 languages that we're gonna offer next year. So that's a lot. But always there are kids who switch. A couple high schools offer German or Latin, and so a few kids will switch. But for the most part, our kids are taking the 2 most popular languages, as we can see. As you can see on this, the kids taking Spanish, we have the 3 levels, 8th graders. There were no 8th graders in Spanish 1, but we had about 8th graders taking Spanish 2. Some of them were brand new to Crocker, and had a little Spanish background. Some of them were coming in off of a different program. So we had a few kids maybe taking the class again. So we had about 4% taking Spanish 2, with the majority taking Spanish 3 and Spanish 3 in advance. We had 42 kids taking the advanced class, which is the most we've ever had. So it was a good year. And then there are a few kids who don't take Spanish. They have another program that they're in. So, talking about what levels, this is important to us to figure out, do we send most of our kids on, or do they start back over in the beginning of Spanish? And as you can see, there are some kids who are taking freshman level, which is 1-2. And you see that's 32 kids, about 18%. Well, some of them have never taken Spanish before at all. And I do have a couple kids who have told me that I asked, they said, oh, I've chosen to take Spanish 1-2 because they wanted something easy their first year. And so, anyway, but you can see a big group of the kids, 28% are taking, 28% of 49 of the kids are taking the sophomore level as freshmen. And then we have 17 kids, about 10% of our kids taking junior level as freshmen. And I know part of the World Language Committee, they wanted to know, well, what does that mean for counting towards high school? And I have the answer on my webpage, but basically it varies from school to school. So you say, well, if my kid qualifies for junior year, do they only have to take 1 year and then they can be done taking world language? Some schools may say yes, 1 year and you're done. Take 5, 6 and you're done. But other schools might say, no, you have to take them in, you have to take 2 years or 3 years. So every school differs in what they'll accept. But every student is required to take at least 1. To graduate, they have to take 1 year. So So the survey I thought was interesting, and I didn't really get to share that much with the committee. Here's what I was talking about. I looked at the 4 public high schools, including the new technology high school over at Mills. What's it called again? Design Tech High School. They have a totally different program where it's all online. You can take pretty much any language in the world you want. But most of the kids will be taking more of the traditional track. And I looked at 7 of the most popular private high schools. And every single high school does offer Spanish, and most of them, all but 1 or 2, do offer Mandarin as well. So again, we made the good choices in the languages that we offer. And then one thing that was heartening is that many kids will continue to transition with the Realidades text, which is what we use, and all the San Mateo high schools use it as well, and several of the private schools. So I have, my website has more information about receiving credit if you want to know specifics. And then the high school websites are also plethora of information. So my recommendation, I mean, this is just me putting a plug in for world language. Over the past several years, being a language teacher at Crocker for 11 years, we've had, budget issues over the last few years. Nobody's, ignorant of those. But the class sizes have grown, and it makes a big difference in the learning of the students, the world language. And I know, in an ideal world, that these classes would be around 20. But if we could continue to, for language acquisition and communication and really getting to know the language and really increasing fluency, if we really want, fluent speakers, having, smaller class sizes. And I know that goes for many subject areas. And also including making sure that we continue with our cross-articulation with the elementary and bringing the new Spanish teacher aboard. And also having cross-articulation with our new Mandarin teacher too. And so putting something similar together for that program as well. Because I'm sure we have kids coming in with Mandarin at all different levels as well. So there's a party outside. Well, it's a good thing I'm just about finished. Anyway, so thank you for listening. And if you have any questions, feel free.
I just want to say, I like the HIP plus concept sales pitch at the end. It sort of ties it all together for me. Yeah, it's good. So go ahead.
Well, I don't know if the board wants to tell you what the action is required now, or is it going to move forward?
I think, were there any other comments? I was going to turn it over to you to ask.
Any other
So I sort of jump right in.
Yeah, just a small question. The students who are not taking Spanish, can you tell me a little bit more about those students?
Sometimes it's like a new 8th grade student that we don't want to put them in the Spanish 1 class because it's mainly 6th graders. It's just the gap in age is a little bit hard emotionally, not so much, they can probably do just fine. That's what it's been in the past. We also have some students who are in academic support, or they might be in a special program, an RTI program for additional support and resources. So as of right now, those are typically the kids who don't take a world language. Am I missing anybody in the list of? Oh, okay. We have one fluent student who tested out of it. So he was a fluent Spanish speaker.
Just to expand on that, during the individualized education plan meetings to support students with special needs, some students need to spend more time on some subjects, language arts, mathematics, and so in order to accomplish that and make sure they're meeting their academic needs, the team makes the decision, well, then we need to steal some of the time from some other subjects, including at times world language. That does not mean that all special needs students do not take world language, by no means, most do. But some students, they really need to spend their educational minutes in subjects other than world language, but that's usually an individualized education plan decision.
And the fluent students and the students who have no Spanish at all, do they get an extra elective? Is
Yeah,
that-
typically, yes, they have another elective, so that's what he has this year. But if that, happened when we had another language, he would be trying Mandarin now. So they would get an opportunity to try another language.
Thank you.
I was just gonna thank you for this, to come up with such a thorough, individualized, testing plan has been great. I think it really has led to some great placements. And I thought the survey information was really useful. Is there, do you think there's any way to follow up and find out how they do for that first year in high school and what language they do take? I know that requires some extra, an extra step in terms of harnessing those emails from the
Right,
educators.
getting the information back. We could definitely, most of the kids have made their choices of what, classes they're taking. I'm not sure how many kids will switch after freshman year because they, I don't want to do this, I'll go back, I might go back, if they tried, let's say Latin. I'd say, that was too challenging, I might go back and take Spanish for my other year or two. So, we can definitely something to look into, yeah.
Except you did not to, maybe I'm just speaking of my children, maybe their opinion of their level might be higher.
Right. Typically, we get good response from the kids coming back, and they come in, freshmen come in saying, Mrs. Eyre, I'm taking 5-6 this year, so they, usually you don't get too many kids going, oh, I'm only in 1-2. Usually they're, very proud to say, I'm taking this level, and what we've heard from our cross-articulation with Burlingame High School, is that the kids who come in taking 5-6, because I know there's always that concern, from parents saying, my cute little freshman girl in class with a junior boy. Actually, the kids who are in 5-6 tend to be academically driven anyway. They want to, do well, and it's not so much a social thing as, and the kids who are freshmen in that class, sophomore, they tend to do very well because it is more of an academic and not such a have-to class. So, thank you. Yes.
I think that's a good idea. What
Wait,
Karen was mentioning.
We're not in
sorry.
public
Oh,
comment.
sorry.
We'll just
Oh,
have to
no,
wait
I
a
went,
moment.
I thought you were
You'll have to
asking for
wait a moment.
questions.
That's a school teacher, just
Oh,
like
okay, sorry
letting
about
everybody
that.
speak.
It's all right. No parking.
Thank you, Lisa, this is really great, high school information in particular. So I just have some questions about context. So you've been there 11 years, so what was there before you put the system in place? And if you could give a little more information about exactly what the assessment looks like. I know you said there's an oral component, and then where you got those materials.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, absolutely. They're based off of the Realidades program, and I looked at their assessments, and I did pull some of the information, but mainly made it up based on instruction that Sandra Brown and I, for the 7th grade, we were the 2 teachers that teach, and so we came up with it, and or I came up with it, and she kind of helped me revise it and say, no, that's not a good question, or, oh, maybe this one would be better. So I definitely got input from my teammates. The 6th grade one, I've sent it out to them to look at. They haven't, given me feedback yet, but we're going to be giving that next week. So, but typically there's feedback, and again, I showed Alec McKenzie it, and he said it looked like a really comprehensive test. So I'll tell you what it consists of, and I'm sorry I didn't say that before. And I couldn't put it in the board for obvious reasons. I couldn't put the assessment. Anyway, she's already taken it, so too late. Anyway, so the first thing they do is a grammar and vocab. Like I said, we have a packet that we start off with. We do a review of all the, of the vocabulary and grammar concepts that have been taught mainly this year. A little bit of review of like regular verb conjugations, things that they learned the year before. So there's a grammar and vocabulary test that is actually Scantron because there are 150 students in a finite time. We do a multiple choice on that. The second component is a reading and listening portion where they all listen to a native speaker on CD, and it's from the program. It's one of their assessments that they've used, but I altered the questions to make them more appropriate for our purposes. And then, so those are 2 components. The other component is a writing where they write a paragraph. They get to choose from 3 prompts over topics that we've covered this year. one topic we covered, recently was going to a restaurant, another, so they were able to write about that, or what are some good healthy food choices and exercise choices, that was another topic that we talked about. So they got to choose which prompt, and then they wrote about it, and we've developed a rubric over the past few years. And then the final thing was the verbal component, and not because of timing, can't have every student take the verbal. So what we do is, we have, based on their grades plus the other test scores and the writing scores, then we look at those kids that are likely, or even on the cusp, then they're asked to take the verbal, and they come out with me. And this year, because I have most of the Spanish classes, and Senator Brown just has one, I'm doing all the verbal testing to keep it consistent. But then we're going back through and we're reviewing it together. So I want to make sure that there's that consistency this year. Where this came from, we've had an advanced program for 15 years. Before it was just years ago it was just based on grades. When I came along, Sherry Young had put together, or Lines, excuse me, she was Sherry Young at the time, Sherry Lines had put together an assessment that was based off of previous materials used. And then I made one based off the Buen Viaje program that we had used for about 10 years. A couple years ago, we changed to Realidades, so it had to be, the whole other program had to be completely, or the other test had to be thrown out, which was actually okay because it didn't really match what the instruction was now. And so then I decided to make it my HIT plan and put all these pieces, so now we have a system for incoming students, a system for 6th graders, 7th graders, and putting it all together and having the communication, the letters kind of pre-written, but then can be tailored for each step, student's needs. And each year it's tweaked a little bit and changed. So,
Thank you.
does that
Yes.
answer your question?
Yes, that answered all of those questions, and it sounds like this has been somewhat institutionalized now, or
It is,
being
it is.
institutionalized.
Right.
So it's a wonderful legacy.
Thank you.
for
And it will
Proctor.
carry on with Sandra and Alejandra and Alec McKenzie. It'll continue.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Great.
Margie asked all my questions. Thank you.
What she said.
I just have compliments. This is something we've been looking to do in foreign languages to provide the sort of structure around it. So I'm so pleased that this is a legacy, as Margie said, that you're leaving behind. And if there's HIT D, does that mean you're going to take it on in elementary school and expand it?
I never like to be bored.
Are there strings attached if we give you smaller class sizes? Can you work on that? I know.
I will do that.
So, Modell.
Just because I thank you, Lisa, it was a really wonderful example.
Oh, I'm sorry. I beg your pardon. Greg's reminding me, we did have a message, a question from the public.
Oh,
I should
sorry.
ask if anybody else might have, pardon me for
She
interrupting.
needs the microphone.
Well, I don't need the microphone.
You do
I will
actually.
need-
You need somebody to
So I just had a question. How difficult would it be to implement what Karen was suggesting? To test, to get a survey from previous students who attended Crocker, from where are they now with the high schools, and what language did they decide to move forward with, and if they continued on the route of Spanish, how they progressed, freshman, sophomore, junior year. Because we see a lot of options with the Survey Monkey, and it's not difficult to use, and we could ask that the students who graduate as they're going out put the email, because most of them do continue to use the same email address.
Thank you. I'm going to take all the public comment first.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Patsy, wait, the microphone so we can get you on tape.
Okay, first of all, I want to say something about this year. Mr. McKenzie mentioned about the new textbook for this 8th grader. We started for 6th grade. We changed the new textbook. 6th grade, they learn a couple chapters. 7th grade, they learn a couple chapters. 8th grade, they still using level 1, beginning of school year. And he told me, oh, I haven't finished the book level 1 yet. I said, this is advanced Spanish. My daughter actually, she's in advanced Spanish. And I have a meeting with him in October. I said, Mr. McKenzie, last year, my son also in your class, same teachers, same way called advanced Spanish. He already did couple essay. And Ms. Kenzie said, we are not doing essay this year. So I was so disappointed. Same teacher teaching the same supposed to be same curriculum.
Cassie, can I ask you a question? This needs to relate to,
Yeah, I
the
know.
HIP plan, otherwise we can't allow the public comments.
I know,
so-
but the level 1, why they need 3 years
It's
to
not,
teach?
it's not about the presentation that Lisa made.
Let
We're not
me-
talking about the global
okay.
Spanish program, we're talking about the assessment program that Lisa did for
Yes,
HIP.
and then Mr. McKenzie also say that
No, I'm
when
sorry,
you
Cassie.
finish this advanced Spanish, when you go to high school, if you go to public high school, you will place to 5, 6. But when you go to private
I
school,
have not
you have
heard
to
of,
take the
I haven't
placement
heard a
test.
question yet. Do you have
Sometimes
a
you place to
question?
level 1. So this is what I heard
Okay.
about it.
Thank you for your comment.
But I know,
This-
but this is
yeah,
the
this is not
truth.
relevant to the topic, I'm sorry.
You know, this could, as a point of order, if you wanted to talk about this, this could come under a public hearing
Thank
for
you.
items not on the agenda.
Yes.
And then you could read your points into the record because
Correct.
this would be a public
You're right, but right now
hearing.
we have to stay on topic. So, are there any other members of the public that would like to address Ms. Ayer or the board regarding the HIP plan presentation? Yeah. Thank you.
First of all, I just want to say that was such an incredible amount of work, and thank you for the assessment. I would like to say the opposite. My daughter is actually, so she tested, she took the assessment, and she is placed in 5, 6. She could place in 7, 8 according to San Mateo High School. She, from what I remember, she actually did write multiple projects and multiple statements in essays. And I think the assessment is a fantastic idea. I think it's a great building block to improve on. Nothing is perfect, but I love that we're focusing on the positive and we are moving towards change. And I love all the work you've done, so thank you for that on behalf of the parents.
Thank you very much. Are there any other comments or questions from the public? So if you'd like to respond, so
Okay.
you can do that.
Regarding the follow-up emails, a lot of that takes, the kids to respond back.
Right.
And so, we could absolutely send, we had the kids' emails and could, send out, a mass email to them and saying, hey, would you please take this survey? We could absolutely do that to see where they're, and how far it goes. My worry is that we wouldn't get a lot of feedback. I did get, when I did the survey with the kids, I did get one Harry Potter who responded, and I don't know if, we did that when the kids were older, if they might not take it as seriously as they did this year. So, just something to consider, but that's something we can definitely look into.
I think even the parent would respond, like I would respond if you
Kathy,
included the parents.
this isn't a dialogue, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
We
Well, no,
received-
I don't wanna just exclude, not just children, add parents to that email too, because I think parents.
And then, and
Thank
just
you.
the other, okay. Just regarding the other question, no. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Odell?
Thank you, Lisa. I just want to say that one of the reasons that this is such a good example of the HIP plan is it shows where there was a real need that we had identified within the school to move in this direction. The teachers felt it, parents needed more communication, we wanted a better placement system. And in the course of the regular year, it's very difficult to do those things that are so over and above what you do within your classroom. So one of the things the HIP program does allow us to do is to find someone with a passion for a particular thing who can devote some additional time and energy and really focused effort on really wrapping things up, tying them together, and moving us forward. So, a very good example of that. And Lisa, as soon as we're done with our second one, then we'll present to the board your approval of your work plan. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Next person I'm going to call up is Diana Burnett, who is the music teacher at South School. And you're going to to hear a lot of passion and enthusiasm for her subject area because that's just who she is. And I think you're going to enjoy it. She will explain most of it to you, but the title of her HIP plan is Making Music Through Social Studies. And she has a very strong belief that why teach one thing when you can teach two?
Right. And they have 30 seconds. Yeah.
Another thing that I always loved about her project, because over the years, they do these presentations over 3 years, so I hear them at the beginning, at the inception, as they change and grow, and they always change from how they are starting out to where they end up. There are always great changes. But one of the things that Diana did, an example that she did, is try to not just take her original idea, but to also incorporate the district's goals of looking to be global citizens, of looking to include our essential outcomes. All of those kinds of things that she knows we were doing within the district found their way into her HIP plan as she was going through. So we end up with sort of value added to those things that the person is starting in the first place. Haven't seen a boombox in a while. I see the iPad.
Diana, I turned it on, so I don't know if you turned it back on.
I did. Thank you so very much. I'm very excited to share my HIP plan regarding, it's called Making Music Through Social Studies. And in your packets, board members, I've included 14 lessons. However, I've done many. All of them have encompassed pulling in social studies, essential outcomes. Of course, Common Core, which has always been the music, but it was so nice to actually have exact names and labels for each of these things, and assessments. And one of the most exciting things, and Lodell will attest to this, is that I actually found and created a template added to this that works, not only for music, and it's on the shared folder for music teachers at this point, and will be put to other teachers as well, but just clearly defines national standards for music, along with Common Core alignments, and along with essential outcomes. So tonight, what I would like to do is do a few lessons with you, simulate what a classroom lesson would look like with 2 pieces. And before this, I should share how this has kind of melded for the past 3 years. It started off, Lodell and the HIP committee, I would really like to do songs from maybe around the world, some American folk songs. And so we started in that direction. Second year, Lodell said, you know, Diana, there's a need for some Spanish. Could you please add Spanish? I said, absolutely. So that was a wonderful caveat to add as well. The glitch was the technology piece, and I was so disappointed. Sadly, there were just so many issues between my computer and the smart board in the beautiful older building at South School. So every time I was so excited, like, all right, kids, here we go, and I'd be ready, and the internet's down, or my computer would have a hiccup. So thankfully, either Raleigh or one of the wonderful gentlemen, I said, could I just have an old school map? And it was great. A couple times it fell off the wall. No one was hurt during the process, and we had fun. So if we could begin with, we'll start with American Creed. Picture books are just a wonderful way of learning now that we are integrating TK as well. These are great through 5th grade. I still have 5th graders that will just, they're waiting. They're like, oh, could we move forward? Absolutely, come on down. So they scoot up a little forward and we sing. They've been essential for our wonderful EL students that have joined us as of late. As of the past month, we've had 3, I believe, wonderful students join South. For a special day, it's been a gift. So, if you would kindly like to sing with me. We'll begin with the song, and then we'll move to the connection with Catherine Lee Bates. Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of rains, for purple mountains' majesty, above the fruited plain. America, America, God shared His grace.
southerly wave of grain, what does it mean if it's waving? It could be windy. So we're always asking them questions. What part of the United States would the amber wave of grain be waving? Would it be on top of a mountain? Oh, you just see the smoke. It's fantastic. You know, I do this for my own amusement. No. But truly, it's so neat, and it's imperative for all students to know songs written for our country, about our country. So this is one I do, of course, our anthem and others as well. Now, about Catherine Lee Bates. What a cool woman. A professor in 1893 travels from Wellesley College over to Colorado and decides to teach a summer class. And on the way over, she's 36, and at the time, yes, still young, but at that time, you know, to travel cross country by herself with a few other teachers, that was pretty adventurous. And she traveled on a Pioneer wagon. And she was traveling she was in Chicago, and she saw the World Exposition. And everything was alabaster white. That's where she took the line from. Alabaster cities gleam. Traveling through Kansas, she saw the plains. So there was the amber waves of grain. And when she got to the top of Pikes Peak in Colorado, after a mule ride, when the covered wagon was done and couldn't go any further, she saw purple mountain majesties. And so, I always have the quizzical look on some children when they're like, well, why would the mountains be purple? You know, so then I let them stew a little bit. Well, would they be purple first thing in the morning? I don't know. Maybe when the sun goes down, or, you know, and they're talking, I do quite a bit of peer discussion. Even with the little ones, just ask each other some questions. What do you think? And of course, we talk about pride in being American and how important poetry is to the music. And I won't forget Samuel Ward, who his piece of music was chosen to put together with this. Sadly, he wasn't alive when it was put together, but Catherine Bates was able to hear it. And the poem was first published in the early 1900s on Independence Day, so that made it ever so special. So, just a quick glance of a lesson. I would expand it more for other children who go up to 8th grade, keeping it super simple for TK and kindergartners. Just really, I have actually a few different copies, but this is my favorite and most loved. So this is lesson 1. And we're going to now move on and traveling to Columbia. So the lesson next that we will do is entitled The Alligator. And that'll be in your packet. So first question, where's Columbia? Gosh, what continent is that on? And I must say, our wonderful children will very quickly say, oh, South America, South America, fantastic. So we're in South America. And we look and takes a few seconds depending on where you're sitting in the classroom and if you can see it or not. And we will jump up and notice, we're at the top. And gosh, what seas or oceans or what kind of water is around Columbia? And we begin with questioning. Always, most lessons always question. Where are we located? Now, the name of the piece is, and correct me if I pronounce it incorrectly, Sebay-Caiman. So, which is saying, hey, let's go check out that alligator. And why would alligators be prevalent in this upper area of coast of Columbia? Well, we do know, is the water cold or warm? Would alligators like to live there? What kind of teeth do alligators have? What color would their scales be? We take it, again, depending on the age, I take the lesson and make it age appropriate for them. This song focuses on one city, Barranquilla, which is on the coast, right up here. And it's a song of humor, a little tongue-in-cheek, because it's saying, hey, this alligator loves cold lemonade and bread, but if you step in the water, he will eat you for a snack. So don't stay in the water for very long, or really not at all, just really, really observe from afar. So, I'd like for you, if you would mind, listen and the refrain will repeat. Musical things that we are listening for is ostinato. Ostinato is the Italian word for steady beat. So if you would kindly, I have some rhythm sticks if you would so like. And what I do, and you do not have to, but when we're passing out rhythm sticks, so it could be so exciting to perhaps tap someone on the head, but to make things simple, when we're learning about ostinato, we do. Oh, do you mind, Mr. Wayne? We have a little more. Take two, pass them down. Grab 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 two, pass them down, and so on and so forth. And if you do not like them, you can pass them to a neighbor or a friend. But again, remember, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it is not appropriate to touch anyone with when you have your rhythm sticks, the nice thing to do, we can do a few things. You may rest them on your shoulders. It is not okay to start tapping on the floor quite yet. You know, they're itching, they're just like, and give them about 30 seconds, make as much noise as you want, and they do. Another option is to be an alien. So we've got the thing, you can keep them here, or you can keep them here. You are simply not allowed to touch anyone with them. If you would kindly keep a steady beat with me on your lap. If you don't feel like clapping, you may also tap your shoulder or your head. And we switch off, and we stand up also and do the delta play, the rhythmic movement of moving our feet, using the whole body. So let's get the steady beat going. And keep it going. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Voy a empezar mi relato con alegría y con afán. Voy a empezar mi relato con alegría y con afán. Por el río Magdalena se volvió un hombre caimán. Por el río Magdalena se volvió un hombre caimán. Se va el caimán, se va el caimán. Se va para Barranquilla, se va el caimán, se va el caimán. Se va para Barranquilla, se va el caimán. Se va el caimán, se va para Barranquilla, se va el caimán, se va el caimán, se va para Barranquilla.
Wow, ladies and gentlemen, that was fantastic. Thank you for keeping the ostinato, this steady beat. If you could kindly put your sticks down for just a few moments, that would be fantastic. Was that okay, Mr. Collins? What instruments did you hear? Well, before the year 1900, since this is called a cumbia, and cumbia dancing is from the word cumbe coming from Africa, so we know from Africa and also from Panama. And this was actually, the cumbe dance was done by slaves in both Panama and Africa. And it's a very simple dance that we would all do, and if you need to stretch and stand up and do it, you may. If you want to just move your feet while being seated, that's fine. But moving left, right, and we generally start in a line, and then I have the children, which is always a very fun challenge, again, for my own amusement, in a circle, and they have to remember when you're looking at someone around the other end of the circle, they're not moving the same way you are. And then when I say clockwise or counterclockwise, they're just so we give straight ahead, and it's just left together, or right together, excuse me, left together, to the music. And the goal is to do this. And then if some students feel really bold, they're doing this while they're singing just the refrain, because we haven't had Spanish for many years. And so some of them are not comfortable. And if they can do all three things, meaning do the cumbia, and sing, and tap an ostinato, the deeper level learning that's happening, both sides of the brain are just simply firing off, and it's fantastic. So, again, I do this piece beginning in 4th grade, so 4th and 5th graders. And I would just do the dance, I will do it with third graders next week, just to get them accustomed to the language and listening to it, to the music. And I wanted to make sure that prior to 1900, we heard the accordion, and the accordion came after 1900, and that was the Spanish influence. So there's European influence, there's influence from Africa, and of course, it's wonderful own Colombian influences as well. And so those are just two tastes of two lessons that I do. They're just a little varied. And so if I may kindly ask you to take two, pass them back, take two, and two, pass them back, take. Thank you very much. And I'm very, very excited because I was recently asked to put a few other lessons together, which I will be putting up before the end of the school year. And what I love about this is that this is how whenever I do a lesson, in my mind I'm thinking of my hip. Am I doing this? Am I always pulling together Common Core, which I think about, and essential outcomes, but it really has a nice, clear, concise template to follow. And it leads the way I choose musicals and things. For example, I've already introduced the second and third graders for their musical coming up next year. It's all going to be about the presidents of the United States. And they will be able to say all the names of the presidents and understand a little of their history and where they're from. So it's just been an exciting project. And I want to thank you for the opportunity because it's just, I see it growing and I'm excited to keep adding to it.
Thanks for your presentation, really enjoyed that. I do want to quickly say, I haven't even made this thing as part of the board since Harini in the audience was apparently President at West, and I was on the executive board. She also made me do that, so you brought out some nightmares. Thank you for that. Also, Karen touching your stick. These documents are in the back. Are you sharing them with the other teachers? Is that the idea?
They're on the music teacher share folder, as I have shared them with them, and I will open it up. I will put it on the for all the teachers.
And have you had any interaction with any of the other teachers who might?
At this point, just the music teachers and just one from Crocker who is very, very adamant and excited about me working on this certain lesson. So that's my next step.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
I just wanted to thank you for the level of enthusiasm you bring to elementary music. It's just what our kids need. It's fantastic. You really, I've seen you in class. I've had my children have gone through your class. Eleanor's in it now. And you are very good at engaging them. You bring enthusiasm to the class, and it's shown in these lessons. And I love the integration between the social studies and the music. And I think there's a lot to be learned here that is outside of the normal classroom. It's great. So thank you. Thank you for your enthusiasm.
Same, we had Bit North, so that was great. I had just one question, which was, and it sounds like this is the next step, but working with the classroom teacher on maybe their studying Columbia, or how can you extend the lesson or broaden it across the curriculum? I just wanted the extent to which that started.
Yes, actually what I have done, and it's failed to mention, is this year, especially with first grade semester at sea, there has been a different country that was visited. So we visited Morocco and other places, and Michelle Bartfeld came and said, Diana, could you please have a song ready? I said, absolutely. So it was on Fridays when we had them. And so we did music from Ghana and many other places. So it's coming through that way. I add more in-depth things with help with them with the fifth graders. When it's gold rush time, I dig a lot deeper and we add that way. And so I have been, and I will absolutely be doing more to keep these formalized lessons up and available for all teachers in this site.
Just thank you, I love it.
Same room with you, music. I know. I was actually very intrigued by, we had a teacher reach out to you from Crocker. Does that mean that come teach with them, or are you giving them a lesson?
It was a teacher on the HIP committee who has actually reached out to me and said, could you please play some music regarding the, from Iran, to really, to just bring that into her lesson, and I said, absolutely. And so that's the next step.
But will you plan to teach this? Do you come as a package with your songs, or do you?
I will put the package together, I can run up at lunch. Sure.
Right, and back and do it for a board meeting, so give you a theme.
Thank you, Diana, it's wonderful, and it was awfully fun to watch the last 3 years to be, when she would come into the room, we'd all get ready, because we knew we were gonna be busy, and her enthusiasm is amazing.
May I open it up for
Oh, of
public
course,
comment in case
absolutely.
somebody has, is there anybody in the public that would like to ask about the good plan or make a comment? Yes, or let me find you a microphone. And if you wouldn't mind, just say your name first for the tape.
Hi, my name is Haruni Krishnan, the infamous role of asking past board members to sing repeatedly. And I think they're emotionally scarred by it. But I just wanted to applaud you. I'm a musician. I'm a, that's my day, that's my job, I should say. I professional musician. I teach voice theory at San Jose State and City College. And I have to tell you that the level of enthusiasm you bring to music, and music as it relates to all aspects, is incredible. Because I think music, is a medium through which you can teach so many different things. It's whether it's exposure to, different cultures, or, it's even in terms of engendering, better study skills. I think it's fantastic. And I know at Crocker, through the 6th grade social studies unit, we've had programs where, so I've come in and I've taught Indian music to all 6th graders. And I, shared aspects of Indian culture within the music. And then we had Carol He follow suit with China, and we recently had a unit on Greece where a bunch of parents who got together and came and shared Greek music and culture. And I can tell you that kids appreciate that, because it's a little glimpse into a civilization and a culture and a thinking that that is it's visual, and it's something that they can envision immediately. So what you are doing is incredible, and I'm truly grateful as a parent and as a musician. So
Thank you.
Are there any other members of the? Okay. Oh, Principal Beal. Absolutely.
Thank you, Elizabeth Beal, Principal of South. I just want to appreciate both presentations, particularly Diana, because she's out South here. But when I came to South, it was very important for me to make sure that what the subject seen as extras or maybe afterthoughts in some districts were truly integrated into the curriculum. And I think your HIP exemplifies what we can do, not only with the gifts that we have for the staff, but just the planning and being strategic in integrating all the subjects together. So I really appreciate the work that you did with this, and of course that you do with the school.
Well,
Diana, I just want to echo everyone else's comments, but also add one on. Just thank you so much for the work that you do at the Tiger Learning Center, and so appreciate it. And I think Isabel was singing for Ajaka the other day, so I attribute that to you. She now has added French to her.
are there any other comments?
I just want to say, Diana, one of the things we talk about in HIP is that we try to get a product done, we try to get something that matches our goals, but we also try to grow a teacher, I would say, along the way. If you don't mind me putting you on the spot, how was the way that you felt like you grew through this process?
It was, so many ways. There isn't one way. It just helped. You left me alone and made me really think for myself, always. When I ask a question, you'd say, Diana, you did
you can figure it out. So I'm like, all right, so I dig a little deeper and dig a little deeper. But I grew in consistently finding ways to put all aspects, again, of Common Core assessment, and all of our, thank you. Essential outcomes that are there, but again, I grew in knowing, I know they're there, but now I can pinpoint exactly where they are at any moment. Odell, you could have called me at 2 a.m. and put us on that and said, yep, it's right there on this line. So that's one of the ways that it happens, so thank you.
I think that's right. As we observed, what we saw was the coming together of every piece, the integration of what you wanted to do, the goal getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and you just running with it. But also, I think what you came up with, when you hit upon that template, you came upon a way to organize what you were doing, it systematizes things, and it makes it such that it is transferable, and it is able to make it sustainable and last over a long period of time, sort of as Lisa was doing with hers, making something sustainable that can carry on and can be added to with simplicity and yet with great effectiveness. So, thank you. And now comes a really important time, which is when I say to the board that it is my recommendation and everyone's recommendation here that the Board of Trustees accept the growth incentive plans for Diana Bergman-Beck, which is an IPC, and also for Lisa Ayer, which is also an IPC, and approve them with salary step IPC with the 2014-15 school year.
Is there a motion?
More side.
So moved.
Second. Okay, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? We are pleased to approve the 15.
You know, leave them?
I wish I had set Senate Bill 1339 to music, but since I did, we'll soldier on. Senate Bill 1339 was signed into law on September 30th, 2012. And the idea is that a pilot project was created by the state of California that sought to incentivize the commuters to reduce air pollution and traffic congestion by decreasing single-occupant vehicle commute trips to Bay Area work sites. And in essence, what this new law requires is that any employer of 50 employees or more within the Bay Area Air Quality District are compelled to offer one of 4 options as a way of increasing multiple occupant commute trips to reduce air pollution and traffic congestion. So every employer needs to choose between either a pre-tax benefit, and in this option, employees exclude their transit or van pooling expenses from taxable income up to $130 per month. So it's in a way, you take that money out before taxes, so it's a break for the employee. It's also a break from the employer, because then you're not paying federal taxes on that same money. Option 2, which is an employer-provided subsidy. So a subsidy would be given by the employer to the employee up to a benefit of $75 per month as a subsidy to encourage the same thing. Or an employer could provide actual transportation, provide a bus, provide a van pool or a shuttle service. Or if none of those options seemed appropriate, you could come up with a 4th option, which you could get approved by the Air Transit Board. And it would have to do as much good as any of the other 3 options, and you'd have to present the plan. In my view, really only options 1 and 2 are viable for this district because of the amount of employees we have, which isn't many, and because they come from lots of different places. Providing a transit service for employees is not cost effective. And there's no alternative commuter benefit that really would serve our needs. So I think the two viable options are option 1 and option 2. In your packet, I've included lots of information, not only about the law itself, but also the Commuter Benefits Program Employer Guide that comes out of the Bay Area Air Quality Management District. And in reviewing these materials, I was especially interested in looking at the getting started options of option 1 and option 2. And in reviewing those materials, it seemed clear that option 1 provided the best benefit to our employees as the most bang for their buck, the most incentive. And also, it would be the only one that would actually have a monetary incentive for us as well, because we would save on FICA taxes that we spend now. So for those reasons, I think that option 1 is most viable. However, in the recommendation that I present to you, I'm giving you two options. Option A is to empower me, the superintendent, to select the commuter benefit option that is most beneficial to the district on a yearly basis. Every year we have to do an annual review, and in that annual review we can either choose the same option or we can switch. This is a new program. It is not in force until September 30th of 2014. So we think that option 1 has a very low staff time, or excuse me, a low, not a very low, but a low staff time. But it could be that when we do it, then it takes more time than we thought for our offices, for, you know, in order to track the pre-tax spending, in order to make those transfers. So it'd be nice to have a little bit of flexibility to change on a year-to-year basis. However, if the board felt that this is something that they want to come before them, we can also choose option B. And option B would be to select option 1, the pre-tax benefit, but then to keep that option going forward, but only if we were going to change from option 1 to one of the other options, should we present it to the board for further action, and if no further action is made, then we just stick with option 1. So those are two options that I present to the board. I'd be happy to answer any of your questions.
Anthony, on option 1, it's probably in the materials that I looked through. It says allow employees to exclude this. How does this happen then? Is it a one-time election at the beginning of the year? It's not mandatory, it's voluntary?
It's not
You can't do it mid-year or change your mind? Or
there's sort of an open enrollment period as we do for insurance.
Right.
And so we would have to notify employees when we start it, and then we have to notify employees every year at a certain time that says, hey, if you'd like to take part in this program, submit your paperwork.
So it'd be like every September 1st or something? Do we pick the year?
I think that we have some discretion on how we implement it, and we can have reasonable, say, hey, you have to tell us by this,
Like the
such
plan
and
year
such time.
kind of, right?
Yes, we can do that with discretion.
Thank you.
Actually, I think you even have more flexibility in this kind of a program. We have a much smaller office, but I implement something like this, and you can come and go and opt in and out of the program at any time. Are you considering an outside vendor?
At this point, no. The outside vendor, as you see in the materials, we'd have to pay that outside vendor. In talking with Elaine, you know, we do know how to do a pre-tax transfer. We would have to track the spending and have some kind of proof. We would have to then buy a voucher. We have to actually, you know, they do the pre-tax dollars, and then we have to actually buy, you know, fill a card out. But we don't think that that would be an inordinate amount of staff time. But again, that's why in option 1, we build in a little flexibility if it turns out we're wrong, because this is a new program.
Right. I think that these programs, when they're run by an outside vendor, they tend to be about $5 a person to administer, so you may want to.
But there's a minimum, and we would have to meet the minimum.
Anyway, we also just have to, do you think that's legally that
It
wrote
is.
this? It is. Free information, okay. Are there any other comments or questions from the trustees?
I was just, following on what you said, Anthony, just getting clarity on what might change that requires some flexibility. It's in the tracking of the data.
Right, so right now, what we're surmising is option 1 will not be overly burdensome from staff. but some of our colleague districts have chosen option 2 because they're positing that that would be easier to track and less staff time. So if you chose recommendation A, it would just give us a little bit more flexibility to make, changes as we see fit.
I'd be in favor of recommendation A, but keeping the board informed as needed, or maybe it's part of the consent agenda. I'm open to both, but flexibility sounds good.
Any other comments or questions from the board? Any members of the public that would like to comment on this item? Yes, we need a microphone for that, I can't see the. Sorry. Hi, Sarah, can you give your name?
Sarah Murphy. I have a question how this might affect some of your teachers who use bicycles. Is there some way they could benefit from this as well, given that bicycles are the best air quality that you can get?
Are there any other questions? Comments from the public? Anthony, did you want to say?
Under the law, bicycles are not a mandated part of the program, and so a district does not have to give a benefit for bicycles. It is an option though, Sarah, that a district can voluntarily choose to do that. My recommendation to the board at this time is, since this is new and there's some accountability pieces, I think it makes sense in the first year of this to do what the law mandates. And then, if it proves to be not onerous, then we can consider separately whether or not we want to voluntarily give more benefits to our employees to relieve traffic congestion and improve air quality. But my current recommendation is, let's start with doing what the law mandates, and then we can always be more aggressive about that in the future.
Anthony, assuming that we go mandate first, subject to adding volunteer stuff, how, I'm putting you on the spot here, how might that change recommendation A?
I think that if we were to do a voluntary benefit that's not mandated by law, that would come before the board. It wouldn't, I don't think that the superintendent would be empowered to do that unilaterally.
Any other comments or questions? Is there a motion?
I move to approve recommendation A to empower the superintendent to select the community benefit option that is most beneficial to the district on a yearly basis.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, recommendation is unanimous. Okay. On to item 8:15, Rec Commission report.
I invite the Recreation Commissioners Lynn Esselstein and Don Geddes to add to my report after I go through some summaries. So at the latest, first of all, some background. Recreation Commission is a joint powers agreement between the town of Hillsborough and the Hillsborough City School District. So 2 trustees sit on the Recreation Commission, 2 town council members sit on the Recreation Commission, and then there's an at-large community member that makes up the 5th member of the Recreation Commission, and together we try to carry out the mission of improving recreational opportunities from everyone who lives in Hillsborough from age 0 to age 100. So that's the mission. We do that by a variety of programs, and we have programs in different areas. And since this is a joint powers agreement, about a year and a half ago, the board said that every time we had a Recreation Commission meeting, they'd like a report to be given on how we're doing, what are we working on, just in the spirit of making sure we all understand what's going on. So that's why we have this report before us tonight. It's a report only, there's no business to conduct, no action items. So first of all, the Recreation Commission meeting, as it says here, the spring program fees and contracts were accepted. We established meeting dates. As always, we give reports on all of the areas of recreation, which includes the preschools, the elementary school programs, the middle school programs, adult programs, and the facilities maintenance, as well as our facilities themselves. This time there was also a report on the proposal for North School. As you know, for about 2 years plus, the Recreation Commission has been talking about our fields in the Hillsborough City School District and those that are used by recreation. We basically have 6 fields that we use in town. There's Vista Field, there's District Field, and then there's the fields at each of the schools. So that's the only fields that we really have in the community and that recreation uses. So about 3 years ago, it was determined that there was a pot of money that Recreation Commission had that was no longer needed. And to explain that, about 15 years ago, to go way back in the past, it was seen that eventually we were going to run out of classroom space at North School. Because we were going to run out of classroom space at North School, that meant that the North Preschool would no longer be able to stay in its current room. Now, before I start a rumor, that's not the case anymore, so I will explain why that's not the case. The bond money went much farther than anyone thought. And we were able to do some conversion projects at North School with the bond dollars that we didn't think we'd be able to. That included the conversion, the library conversion project at North School. This library conversion allowed us to use the old multi-purpose room at North and create a library out of that. And that took the library spaces and we were able to convert those into classrooms. So what that meant is that this pot of money that was being built up at recreation, which was very legitimate, to take the North Preschool and put it somewhere else because we were going to run out of space, we no longer needed those funds in order to do that project. It was no longer necessary with our bond program. So we had a conversation at Recreation Commission. Okay, the point of Recreation Commission is not to make a profit. We're supposed to pour all that money back into programs. So what should we do with this money? The first thing that we studied was to take the South Preschool and put it across the street at South School. There was many benefits to this. One of the benefits is that the kids could take advantage of the library, the other amenities, the multi-purpose room without having to cross the street. And it would just make the preschool more a part of the school campus. As you know, our principals at the elementary schools are also the site directors of our preschools, so this would allow the South principal to have more of a ready access to the preschool program. So we commissioned a study to see if that was feasible. And as all feasibility studies show, of course it's feasible. The question is, what are the costs? So because South School is in a riparian zone with a creek going through it, although it was possible to put the South Preschool at South School, it was not cost efficient to do so. We would have to do a lot of environmental reports, a lot of studies, and it would be very expensive to build out on the sites that we wanted to build out. So the Recreation Commission said, that was a great idea, but it's not really feasible. So the second option was to look at our fields. So we commissioned a study to look at the North Field and the Crocker Field, because those are the fields that are in the worst shape. And as another need for recreation, that would be a secondary need. That it would be great to have better fields for our recreation students, participants. So we commissioned a study, and that study envisioned a large project which would either take the North Field and the Crocker Field and either renovate them with artificial turf or with natural turf, or maybe one of each. Take the 2 tennis courts at North School and expand them to 4 tennis courts, add a bathroom, and add American with Disabilities Act accessibility on both school campuses to make it more conducive to students that have orthopedic challenges or adults that have orthopedic challenges. After a lot of conversations, the Recreation Commission decided to focus not on the whole project as being way, way too expensive right now, but a portion of that. And the portion that we've been looking at is turning the North Field into a synthetic field, including bathrooms and ADA accessibility, and creating a rubberized track around the North Field. That project is between $2.2 and $2.5 million in cost, which is expensive. The Recreation Commission earmarked $1.2 million out of recreation funds, but with a poison pill. We had to secure the rest of the funding by June 30th of this year, 2014. So I presented a report to the Recreation Commission, letting them know that we've approached our user groups to ask if they wanted to take part. Our AYSO colleagues, very understandably so, said that they would be willing to give us some funding for that program, but they have constituents like anybody else, and their mission is to support soccer in the community. And so they would only be willing to give significant resources if we could guarantee them different kinds of field space. Hillsborough Little League, who has recently done a lot of improvements to the district field, said that they don't have money to put towards this project at this time. Burlingame Soccer Club and Coyotes Lacrosse said that they do have some money to donate to this project, but it would again be with the promise of guaranteed access, again, appropriately so. At a special board meeting, I informed the Recreation Commission. The board talked about whether or not it would be a good idea for district funds to be used for these district fields. There are at least two good reasons to do so. One is the water savings that we would, so it would be a cost savings over the long term. And one would be the increased usability to our district students who also use these fields. The district board asked Tony Giacomazzi and I to come back with more information about the cost savings, more numbers, more detailed reporting on what gets paid by recreation, what gets paid by the district, and we will be presenting that probably at the June 24th meeting for possible discussion and action. So that was the synthetic turf proposal. The South and the North preschools also have a proposal for some improvements. At the South preschool, the proposal is for a sunshade, and we approved that sunshade project on the condition that we're not going to use the $1.2 million from the fields. If we use the $1.2 million, we don't have adequate funding to do that project. So we approved it if the fields doesn't go forward. And similarly, the North preschool project is, the North preschool has a bathroom which they use, which currently they need to leave the North preschool facility, leave the classroom, and go into another room. Because of the rules about licensing, that means when a student goes, an adult needs to go with them and needs to bring 2 other students with them, or else we don't have the right ratio in the classroom. If it was a bathroom that could be accessed from the inside, then it's a benefit because it's a lot easier to keep track of the kids, so there's an educational reason, if you will. But it's also much easier for licensing. You don't have to send 3 kids into the bathroom in order to allow them to do that. That seemed to the Recreation Commission an appropriate project, and once again, that was approved contingent upon us not using the $1.2 million for the fields project. We also approved our 14-15 budget, and similarly to how the board has completely redone the board policies for the school district, we've been looking at the joint powers agreement which governs the Recreation Commission, and we've taken it before the commission 4 different times now. We have further edits that we're going to present in the fall, hopefully for adoption of a new joint powers agreement in the next meeting. We also discussed the Memorial Day Parade, trees, and traffic as being joint items of communication. I invite Lynn or Dawn to give any other information about Recreation Commission meeting.
I think you summed it up really well, Anthony. The only thing I would say is that the commission is always pleased to see growth in all of the programs. We have a lot of participants. In particular, we've seen a great deal of growth with the adult programs, and so these are, it's been a huge thing to have a change in leadership and have Tony come in and improve on the great groundwork that was laid by Mike Harrell when he was recreation director as well. So I just want to say, come and visit us sometimes at the Grant Commission. Are there any comments or questions from the board about the recognition report? Any comments or questions from members of the public? Okay. Thank you, Anthony. And we are on item 816, declaration of need for fully qualified educators.
Item 8.16 would allow the district on an as-needed basis to allow us to employ teachers on an emergency permit or who have limited assignments or permits. I wanna make, at least 2 points clear. Number one, this allows us the flexibility to do so. We're not sure if we're gonna take advantage of that flexibility. And number two, the way I see agenda item 8.16 is it gives us the ability to hire the best person for the job. And here's what I mean by that. And this is a real example that's happened in our school district very recently. We had a teacher that was applying that taught in Arizona. Arizona has some reciprocity with California. She had a California credential, that all worked out fine. She had a single subject credential, that worked out fine. Arizona has its own version of the CLAD, the certificate that allows a teacher to teach students that are English language learners. And Arizona said this will work for California, no problem. We submitted all that to the California Department of Education, we started the process, and at some point along the process, the California Department of Education said, no, you know, this person has to do A, B, and C because their version of CLAD is not exactly the same as our version of CLAD. So what this allowed us to do is continue the process with this very effective teacher, but give them a year to work for their CLAD and clear that completely so that we can still have them on staff and serving children. And now this employee is well on their way to completing that, so we will not need to take advantage of this for that employee in the future. Again, it's a matter of, because of the complexity of credentialing, sometimes we fully think that everything's fine, but there's one little detail, especially if a candidate's coming from out of state. So I would recommend that the board approve this so that it can give us the flexibility to hire the best person for the job.
Thank you, Anthony. Questions? Comment?
I just want to emphasize and in support of Anthony, that this is a pro forma thing that every district passes every single year, just to have the flexibility.
Thank you. Are there any comments or questions from members of the public? Okay. This is an action item. Is there a motion?
Sure, I move that the board approve the operation of need for fully qualified educators for the 2014-15 school year.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Recommendations approved.
Thank you.
Okay. We're on 9.0, public hearing for items not on the agenda. Patsy, did you want to finish your comment?
Yeah. Do I need my?
Yes, you will. Thank you.
So, again, I want to mention about the Spanish level 1, that textbook we'll be using for 6th and 8th grade. And this year, when the beginning of school year, Mr. Nancy mentioned, we spent some time in 6th grade teaching couple, like 3 chapters. And then, I don't remember how many chapters for 7th grade. And then, this year, he said we have not finished the level 1. So, we will continue to finish by December. And then they will start to use level 2, which is sophomore year in high school textbook. So I look at the textbook, looks very familiar to me. I remember I saw it in the past for my older kids. So, and then I saw I asked him about the essay. He said he doesn't have time to teach for Spanish, advanced Spanish 3A essay this year because the schedule and too many students. So he said we would do 1 Trump paragraph for the student, and then we will do the group essay. So compared to last year, my son also taking advanced 3A, advanced 3A Spanish, because just 1 year apart, so I remember a lot of things. If too long, I probably cannot. So, and he wrote a lot of essays. So the curriculum is totally changed to me. I don't know because of different textbook, because he's using the old curriculum textbook, and this 8th grade, they start a new textbook when they were 6th grade. So different textbook. So I'm not sure that is the new textbook dump people dance or not enough time to teach. So this year, I don't see my daughter write that many essays. Basically, it's pretty easy. I mean, not pretty easy, just different curriculum, okay? Maybe harder for vocabulary, but I don't know. But in order to improve Spanish skill, I think essay and verbal are very, very important. I hope you guys agree. So when my oldest son, he didn't take advanced Spanish when he was in Crawford 2007. He took the regular free Spanish, but the teacher came from Spain. That was the first year Mrs. Chen hired. And then the teacher gave them very difficult time for the non-Spanish speaker. So, and by the end of the year, I can tell he caught up. And then when we placed him in SI, we did not want him to take any placement test. We just want him to take Spanish 1. And then he refused after the placement test, the placement came out, say, you didn't take the placement test, so you would take Spanish 1. That is agreement. You don't take placement test, you go to level 1. So he was very regret. And then after the whole summer, never touched any Spanish, and then he took the Spanish test, got 2 honors. So that was amazing. That means he learned. He really learned without practice for whole 3 months. So that means the teacher really teach a lot during the school year. So we appreciate the program you brought it in from Spain. And Kyle, my son, takes advanced Spanish. He also got 2 honors in SI. So to me, it's no much difference. But my daughter, I look at the curriculum, it looks different, so I don't want her to take, actually herself, not me. She told me she doesn't want to continue in high school to take Spanish. She wants to take another language. So we changed to another language for Mandarin. So I just think about, if you have to use 2.5 years to teach 1 chapter, usually the high school only use 1 year. They will not repeat in sophomore year for teaching Spanish 1. So it doesn't make any sense. We are useful, supposed to have the best education in this area. I just think about you should finish at least Spanish 1 in 7th grade. Does it make sense?
Thank you. We're at 4 minutes.
Okay.
Appreciate your comments. Thank you
All
very
right.
much, Patsy.
Thank you.
Is there any other comments? Yes, Serene?
To stand for this. My name is Hareen Krishnan, and I have a comment that I've been waiting to say for a long time. And now that my child is leaving the district, I'm very happy to share it, as well as a request. I have been a parent, like so many dedicated parents in the Hillsborough Schools community, for 13 years. My last child is leaving. I wish I could adopt more children. I have worked, and I can honestly say this with full conscience, I've worked with every fiber of my being I've invested so much energy, time, effort, and resources into making these schools the most amazing schools they could be as a parent volunteer. And I can honestly say that I put my money and my time and my energy where my mouth is, and I cannot say that for a lot of individuals. I choose to spend my time working with the team of teachers and administrators, and I have to say, and administrators, in making sure that not only do I celebrate the positive accomplishments, and I do, whether it's the web program which has made the transition to middle school phenomenal, or whether the fact that our schools continue, North and West, continue to be distinguished schools, or the fact that 144 8th graders went to DC today and watched the placing a wreath on the Arlington National Monument, Arlington National Cemetery, Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, or whether it is the Crocker schedule, which was under a lot of contention, but it's precisely because of the Crocker schedule that Crocker is way ahead of the game in embracing the Common Core curriculum with the Common time for teachers. I choose to embrace the positive accomplishments. And I don't say that our schools are perfect. However, what I choose not to do is engage in empty rhetoric and grandiose statements and emails for political reasons, or engage in constantly negative and pernicious statements by the same group of individuals who not only at school but outside of school go around beating a drum. Hillsborough schools are going down the drain.
This is bad, that is bad, this is bad. And it does disservice to individuals like me who worked all their life in the classrooms with the teachers, countless hours to improve the schools in a positive way. I have worked, can say that I've actually worked positively to improve the schools in a positive way, and I choose to do so. I applaud myself on the fact that we live in a community that values parent input, that is passionate about, about their kids' education. I choose to agree. I agree to disagree passionately, but in a respectful and kind manner. Unfortunately, I've been coming to these board meetings for a long time, and I have seen that over the course of the last year, I have seen the stewards of our kids' education, you guys, you are unpaid stewards. You invest countless hours into our kids' education. And the administrators who have invested so many hours and resources into our kids, into serving the best interests of our kids. I have watched you mocked, ridiculed, derided by individuals who snort, who grunt, engaging in disrespectful and unkind behavior, which we wouldn't want, condone our kids to engage in. Because our kids go to schools that are communities of kindness and respect. And I will say, and I would like to finish by saying that, yes, I applaud myself on the fact that we have exceptional teachers who have the best interests of our kids at heart. But we also have exceptional administrators, whether they choose to believe it or not, who do have our kids' best interests of our kids at heart. And I also believe, and I will finish, and I will say this, I think we have to support our administrators. We have to support our administrators. They do have our kids' best interests at heart. And it's not good to vilify them in public and social media and to mock them. Let's stop this, please.
Is there anyone else who wanted to address the board? Lana?
My name is Lana Guernsey. I'd like to speak to you this evening as a parent in this district and as an involved member of our community. I respect and appreciate the time allowed for public comment, and therefore I've prepared my comments accordingly. I'm speaking to you this evening on the subject of appreciation for the role and community contributions of our trustees in support of your decision to use an appointment process to fill a board vacancy. As we come to the close of yet another amazing school year, I would like to thank you, the board, for your public service as trustees of our schools, and I would like to thank our superintendent, administrators, and all of our classroom teachers for their tireless and selfless dedication to the world-class education our students receive in this district. As was evidenced tonight by Maren Macaluso's report from the School Foundation, we have seen a record level of private contributions this year in support of this district, giving dollars entrusted to you, our trustees, to allocate appropriately. In a time even in which we are seeing additional resources made available to the many priorities you set for this district, the appropriate, directed, and efficient use of every last dollar and every hour of administration, staff, and faculty time remains of the utmost importance. In that spirit, I would like to say on the record that I fully support your decision and would like to thank the board for deciding to elect the appointment process to fill a vacant board seat. I believe this is the best, most prudent, and efficient process at this time to return this board to its critical work at hand, providing policy, direction, and oversight of our public schools. Given the importance of representative democracy, I believe that in the last election, our community voters spoke loud and clear about the type of leadership they would like to see on the board with the election of trustees Esselstein, Hardy, and Geddes. Each of these individuals have long and proven track records in our community of sustained and collaborative leadership. They have demonstrated a willingness to serve, to listen openly to our community, to study the facts, and to be informed by data. Each has a history of prolonged leadership, serving in positions of authority in which they were recommended, nominated by volunteer organizations, and then elected to leadership seats on one or more of our school site councils
associated parent group boards, and/or the Hillsborough Schools Foundation. Through the appointment process to fill a vacant board seat, I encourage and urge you, the board, to prioritize this type of demonstrated, community-vetted leadership in your review of the numerous candidates who have presented themselves, and I thank each of them for their willingness to serve our community. I encourage you to appoint the most qualified person in your opinion among these individuals that will fill the seat of Trustee Hardy with the type of leadership, community involvement, and willingness to serve in the collaborative way in which Trustee Hardy has fulfilled her term of public service. The voters have spoken in the last election, and filling a vacant seat with someone whom you, our already elected representatives, believe has the level of experience and professional leadership to fulfill this term is prudent, financially responsible, and represents the desire of our electorate. I stand before you today to thank you for your leadership on this matter, and I stand at the ready to support fully the candidate appointed through this process and to mobilize other parents and members of our community to join me in the same. I believe that the inclusive and visionary process of HCSD Forward, the record financial contributions from the majority of parents in our district, and the thousands upon thousands of volunteer hours that have been given in support of our children say that we as a community have much to celebrate and much of which we could and should be proud. Our schools are exceptional because we have a long track record of excellence and leadership at the helm, at our board level, and in our current superintendent, administrators, and exemplary teachers. I thank all of you and them for their productive, collaborative, and constructive efforts.
Are there any other
Yes.
public comments?
Thank you. My name is Dr. James Yan, 570 Palmer Road. I don't have a prepared statement like what she had, but I wanted to talk about a close item topic about the evaluation of the superintendent. I'd like to start off by.
This is, no, you're in the wrong area. This
Really?
is, you'll need to wait. This is for items that are not on the agenda. If you're addressing something that is on the closed session agenda,
Yes.
we'll call for that comment in just a
I'll wait
moment.
then.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments or addresses from members of the public for things that are not on the agenda? Yes. Laurel first. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Laurel Miranda, and I understand that tomorrow you will be interviewing candidates, and I'm very proud to live in a community where 8 people stepped forward and said yes, I would be a candidate to be appointed to the board of schools. As I think several people have mentioned today, it's not a highly paid position. So I am very pleased that that is the case, but I just wanted to, as you guys know, I am an advocate for children with special needs. I am finishing out my last year as a resource parent in the district and representing that special population, and I just would encourage the board to consider how this appointment process affects those children and perhaps craft a question or two here or there that would address that specific concern. Special needs children do, you know, they're not obviously the majority of the children, but they are by definition special and need your particular attention. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you wish to take a word?
I'm very glad that the world
Can we have
language.
your name? It's up to you, but if you'd like to give your name, then it'll be identified on the table.
My name is Eva. I'm glad that the world language program, the Spanish and Mandarin will be introduced from K to 8. And I just have some question. I have older daughter, she says junior in college. And my son, he just recently took the placement test for Spanish. And I talked to his Spanish teacher, and then she said, oh, he should be placed in Spanish too. Spanish one will be way too easy. But then he took a placement test, and he was placed in Spanish 1. So I was kind of puzzled why the teacher told me that he can place in Spanish 2, but then the test result came out that he was in Spanish 1. So I asked the school, will you please send me the result of the test? So it turns out that he actually scored pretty high in comprehension, but then I think the verbal was lacking. So then I remember this is the first year they changed the schedule. So So I wonder if that's have anything to do with maybe the less instruction hours that he has. So no big deal, he either takes Spanish 1 or he will take naturally, so I'm just curious, what's the difference?
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? Okay, public comment is closed. Did you have any responses?
So there's a couple questions about Spanish, and I'm not prepared to give, cogent answers to those. I think they raised some good questions, so I'd have to work with the Spanish team and the administration at Crocker to be able to give a full answer to some of those good questions. I don't have that information in front of me, but if the board would like us to look into it, I can do that.
I'm going to make a comment. I just want to thank everyone who made a comment this evening for coming to us. Whether your remarks were prepared or off the cuff, we appreciate it very much, so thank you. Are there any other comments from the trustees? Okay, thank you. Item 10.0, the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the, first of all, does anybody want to pull something in the consent agenda?
I'd like to pull 10.1.
10.1? Is there any other requests? I have a motion from the board to
They
approve
pulled
10.1, yes. Approve 10.2 through 4. So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Those items passed unanimously. Item 10.1, personnel action report. Don?
I want to make a comment and thank Chris Collins for his work as assistant principal at Crocker, and I'm grateful that you're remaining in the Lincoln family and seeing you at Crocker. Thank you.
However, I also was pulling it for another reason. I was wondering, Anthony, if you wouldn't mind giving us a little more information about the new instrumental music teacher and the Mandarin teacher.
Absolutely, and before I do that, just one clarification as well on 10.1. Teresa, would you remind us what that is?
Sure. One of the contracts, it's listed correctly under the personal action report under Marcella Murray as a superintendent, but her contract was incorrectly stated as a special ed teacher.
This is for ESY. So, make that correction. To answer Margie's question, our Mandarin teacher, Frances Shaw, is a native speaker of Mandarin Chinese. She was actually born in China. She has extensive experience in China, but then most recently with 3 years experience at the Kip King Collegiate High School in San Lorenzo, California. There, she built a Mandarin curriculum from scratch that served beginners all the way up to the advanced placement level students. And she was served as the only Mandarin teacher teaching all sections at all levels. So she has taught from the very advanced to the straight out beginner, no experience in Mandarin. She's in the advanced placement program. Her students passed the AP Chinese test, which is extremely rigorous, with an 88% passing rate, which is very fine for that test. She organized the New Year Festival celebrations with student performances. She coordinated summer Mandarin learning opportunities outside of school and speech contests for Mandarin students. So she comes to us very highly regarded and highly recommended. One of the things that I was particularly impressed about is there is a transition when somebody who has taught in another country has to make when they come to the United States, and she's already gone through that transition very successfully, and so I think she will make a really good addition to the Crocker staff and the Hillsborough City School District family, so very highly regarded. In terms of our Crocker Middle School band teacher that we're recommending to you tonight, Tana Barnett has served as an elementary band teacher, a middle school band teacher, and a high school band teacher. She served in various school districts, but one of particular note She served at Ralston Middle School in Belmont Redwood Shores from 1999 to 2001. And then from 2002 to 2006, she was the Hillsdale High School Director of Instrumental Music under the San Mateo Union High School District. Because of this connection, she has an active connection with Lester Chun. So they've known each other, they've served as colleagues, they've played in the same pit as professional musicians. So when she moved to Southern California, because her spouse had another position there for employment, she stayed in touch with Mr. Chun. And she served as the director of bands at the John Burroughs High School District in Burbank Unified School District, where she was responsible for a wind ensemble, symphonic band, concert band, marching band, jazz ensemble, chamber ensembles. She did advanced placement musical theory and composition courses. She took her kids to Disneyland. She took her kids to their version of CMEA. Her kids appeared on The Ellen Show and did some recordings for DreamWorks Films. When you're in Southern California, you have some of these opportunities. She was nominated for a Grammy Award in music education. I think all of these things are not as important as my last statement. Lester Chun is thrilled with her. That's the most important one. In all seriousness, he interviewed her with Catherine Mikas when they were in Southern California. He participated in the model lesson, and I was lucky enough to see the model lesson as well, which was excellent. And so, Lester says this is the person that should lead Crocker band going forward, and that's good enough for me.
Thank you, such an important hire, so I was eager to learn more, and the manner of teacher as well, so thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions, comments from the board? Karen?
I too just wanted to thank Chris for his service as assistant principal. You did an amazing job as assistant principal, but I also know you were sorely missed in the classroom. So I'm so glad you're returning to your love, and the kids are going to be thrilled because they found your deep voice really scary. So they're looking forward. I know everyone's looking forward to it. We'll miss you, but I'm glad you're going back to it.
I'm doing it here, so that's
Exactly.
the most important part to
Thank
me.
you.
With 2 letters in here, I guess we had to take you seriously. I too am sad to see you leave the assistant principal position because I think you've done great things in the 2 years that you've been there. Good luck back in the classroom. I know you do a lot. All right, do we have any members of the public that wanted to address us on this particular? Yes.
I'm so sorry you go back to teach. We miss you. Anyway, who is going to replace you?
That I don't know.
Process it's in process right now.
Oh, okay. So probably in September, you guys will have new people. Unknown. Okay.
In process.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? All right, do you have a motion to approve 10.1? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? 10.1 is approved. Unanimous. Thank you. Okay. James? Oh, I'm sorry, communications. We are not there yet. Item 11. I have a couple. Anthony, you want to go first?
Sure. I have 2 items. First of all, the board has expressed an interest in seeing the Gen 7 buildings while they're under construction and asked us to get back to you with some possible dates. Larry has given 3 possible dates, June 16th, 19th, and 20th, and asks if any of those would be convenient for the board to see our buildings being built.
Do you know what time he's thinking about?
That's flexible.
That's
The
flexible.
days are flexible. Yeah, it takes time.
Oh, we have to drive, this is the.
Yeah.
Go to Manteca. Oh, we get to see our building.
Our
That's-
See, our buildings being built.
I went to Manteca.
I
had a good time.
It would be better for me than the 16th.
Okay?
Unpaid, but there are perks.
16th.
I cannot make the 16th, but I have been there, so I would defer to the board.
You know, go down.
It's, well, it takes a while to get there, and, you know, it's a half-day thing. You probably spend an hour and a half there.
And you need afternoon of the 16th.
I couldn't, it might be, I have a lunch meeting right smack dab in the middle of the day, so, for the 16th.
Yeah, go ahead. I'd rather bargain with the San Francisco teacher.
Which is really
Is the 20th okay?
Yeah, let's put it on the 20th.
Okay, I will ask Larry to
It would be
give us
better for me
details
in the
on
afternoon,
the 20th.
but, does that work okay for you, Dawn? Okay.
And then I have a letter, this letter comes from Cynthia McCormick, who lives at 85 Falkirk Lane. Cynthia approached me with this issue, which I'll read into the record, and I invited her to come during this section, either under public hearing or another section, and she asked me to read this to the board in her place. She didn't care to come to the meeting. So I'll read her this letter, it'll take me a minute here. Stated June 2nd, 2014. Dear Mr. Rainey, I am requesting a refund of 17 years of taxes paid under false direction by your office. Before my husband turned 65 in 1997, I visited the school district office to learn how to opt out of the Hillsborough Special Schools Tax, which, by the way, I assisted its passage by being my neighborhood coordinator. I knocked on many doors. I was directed to the woman in charge, who informed me that both parties in a marriage needed to attain the age of 65 to opt out. Believing the woman managing the program, I left and didn't return until I turned 64 to inquire about information, time frames to apply, etc., to opt out. After I got the info, again, information that I would naturally believe, I inquired, so both members of a married household have to be 65 years of age to opt out of this tax? No was the answer. Neither time did I take down names and numbers. My proof is the 17 years of undue taxes and proof of my husband's and my age. Your counsel mentions a statute of limitation of 5 years, to which he refers to county counsel, because I looked into this matter. The statute begins running when a plaintiff learns of a claim. For me, that would be March 2014. My husband turned 65 on April 16, 1997, and then she lists her parcel number, which is 038-020-140, and she writes down the amount of the parcel taxes from each of the years from 1996 to 2013. So she wants $7,995.96 to be refunded to me. Thank you, Cynthia McCormick, 85 Falkirk Lane, Hillsborough, California, 94010, and she gives her telephone number. So in essence, what she's saying is that in 1997, she came to the school district. She says she was given misinformation at that point, and so she feels she's owed the refund that she would have received had she applied for it. When I asked her, you know, in 1997, do you have a record of that conversation or something in paper? And as her letter says, she says she doesn't. So I said, well, it would be hard for us to give that money without some kind of record, or else then anybody could say, hey, you know, this happened to me in the past. So, but I did say that I would take it to the board, and then the board can decide if they wanted to agendize this for further action.
Questions or directions for you? Have you talked to county council?
Yes, I've talked to county council. He says that with, this is Tim Fox, our deputy county council. He said that there's nothing in her claim to show any proof of evidence to this case. He says that there's really two viable options that he would present to you. Either A, say, you know, we're sorry that without any kind of documentation, we don't know what happened between two people in 1997, and it would be reasonable to, you know, deny or to not take action. You're not denying anything, to not take action. If the board wanted to go forward, he would recommend that no more than 5 years be awarded. Those are the two options he presented.
Right.
A. A.
Agreed. Option A. Do nothing.
And she is clear she can now get the exemption.
And
not quite now, because she's 64.
Oh, I see.
But because since this time, unfortunately, her spouse has passed away. So there's no longer a spouse that's 65 or older in the house. So she has to wait till she's 65. Thank you.
Any other communications? Trustees, board items?
Board items.
Let's do communications first.
I just wanna say, I received a really nice thank you note, maybe you all did too, from Dolly Keith for the staff appreciation.
Oh, nice.
So I should have brought it, but she was very good for really good.
Wonderful notes that were passed along to us. Thank you to all of your staff for writing this. Nice to read. Right, any other communications items? I have one. I have an email which I know all 5 of us received from 5, I believe, their parents at South. And I thought I would just refer to this because I was ill during the May meeting and not able to be present when there was an agenda item. A lot of people comment on the proposed reassignment of Ms. Sanderfin over at South, and this letter pertains to that. I've actually received a number of communications, emails, and telephone calls and conversations with parents with their views on this. Some very supportive with the administration, and some, like this one, that take issue with the current direction. And I'm just wanting to acknowledge that this came through and make sure that the public understands that we have received it out of mail, and if it's on email, and these days I assume that things have been forwarded. When it came through, I passed it on to the board and let them know that they were free to respond personally to the people who wrote the thing. It's Chiavara, Emmanuel, Heemstra, Smith, and Milberg. And the letter asked us to take action independent of the grievance process that's also currently pending in the district opposing the reassignment. And I wanted to let people know that there was no call from any board member seeking that this item be placed on the agenda for further action and consideration. And that's all I wanted to say. So, are there any other communications? Yes.
I was just having a hard time to just say a couple things.
Yeah,
I just wanted to, make, this is my last board meeting, so I wanted to make a couple remarks about what I consider to be a truly extraordinary year. First of all, I'd like to express my disappointment in leaving the board so early in my term, and thank the board once again for the extra time and effort they put forward in the appointment process. I know how busy you all are, and it's genuinely appreciated. As I said, this has been an extraordinary year. Together, the board, administration, teaching, and parent communities have worked hard and accomplished amazing things that will have a positive and far-reaching impact on the education of our children for years to come. That impact ranges from bringing language back to our schools and expanding language choice, to a groundbreaking teacher evaluation system, to investing in technology and bringing one-on-one devices to Crocker, as well as growing our technology resources in the elementary schools, and most importantly, investing in our teachers. Investing in a way through salary increases and through significantly increasing development days and resources. This only scratches the surface of what we've accomplished together this year. During my time with the Hillsborough Schools Foundation, I always considered a measure for both the success of the foundation and the district to be 3 things. The participation of the community in our events, the number of people willing to volunteer in our community, and of course the number of people willing to give for our schools. As we heard tonight, all 3 of those measures are up, and they're up significantly. I have a few quick thank yous I'd like to say. First of all, to my fellow board members. I've been so impressed
with your hard work, your depth of knowledge, and your willingness to always seek out information, to learn, and to listen. You bring the highest level of integrity and professionalism to your volunteer positions. This is an outstanding group of accomplished individuals, and I've been honored to spend the short time working with you and learning from you. To Anthony, I've worked closely with Anthony for several years now. The district has moved forward this year at lightning speed, and we have accomplished in 1 year what other districts would hope to accomplish in 5. None of that would have been possible without your leadership, long hours, and hard work. I would like to thank you in particular for your grace. There will always be disagreement, and dialogue is a healthy part of any public organization. In those cases where a few individuals have chosen to stray from the issues and make personal attacks, you have always responded first and foremost with respect, firmness, and above all, grace. Thank you very much for that and for your leadership. To the staff and teachers of Hillsborough, you are truly exceptional. We've had several lean years where we've had to cut back, and yet we've always expected more. You've always risen to the occasion and are consummate professionals. Thank you for supporting our community, being our partners, teaching our children in a way that prepares them for what lies beyond 8th grade. To our community partners, thank you. Our volunteers put in countless hours. It is easy to tear down, it is hard work to build up. You do the real work that unites our communities across all 4 schools. It is a true partnership. I know that the jobs are not easy, and every year you begin the race again. By all measures, you are making real and tangible difference for all the children in our community, so thank you. To our constituents, and most importantly, thank you for being involved and informed. If your family has lived here for generations, you have most likely chosen to stay here because of the extraordinary community this is, and for the education. If you are new to Hillsborough, as I was, I suspect your reasoning is the same. This is an extraordinary community, and I am honored to represent you. Excellent publication is the hallmark of this community, and I thank you for your support. The support both the board and the staff have received from the community is overwhelming, and that makes the job worth doing. As I said before, the process is always better when there's constructive dialogue. The naysayers are loud, but it is clear they are not the majority. Thank you again, and I look forward to rejoining the Hillsborough community for Eleanor's 4th grade year, just in time for you sent me.
It's hard to respond to that, but we're going to miss you a great deal. I didn't actually come prepared, frankly, to say anything this evening because I think I'm in denial, despite the fact that I look at the calendar and I know what's ahead of us tomorrow and beyond. But I think I speak for everybody on the board that it's been an honor to work with you, and that the 6 months that we have had with you, you've made an enormous contribution, and I can't frankly imagine how we would have done these last 6 months, or frankly even since September, when you stood for election, without your voice here with us, Karen. So thank you. We wish you and your family the very, very best. I hear there's an open door policy for Singapore. Anybody needs help scouting Mandarin teachers, let us know. Exactly. We'll be calling you.
in the meetings.
Exactly.
Thanks. Any other communications? Can we respond? Absolutely.
Yeah, I feel like I say this a lot, but I echo what Lynn said. Seriously, you've only been on the board a short time, but you've made an enormous contribution, and jumping on that communications committee and working with Anthony and Dawn to get our videotaped superintendent messages out and the Twitter account, it's just a small part of what you've done, but also what I admire most is your own grace, and grace under pressure, and your diplomacy and your assertiveness as well, which is a key component of being a leader and saying what you believe in, and it's very sad that you're leaving, so I'll miss you.
I do regretfully have one board item that we need to discuss. she was effective at midnight this evening, is that correct? We had scheduled Karen to be our commencement speaker at the Crocker graduation. She has two graduating 8th graders. None of us sitting here today can say the same, although I did say it 2 years ago. And we need to talk about whether or not duties should change. I wanted to put forward the idea that your service has been extraordinarily valuable to this district, and that this is a ceremonial role, and I can't think of anybody, including whomever might be appointed tomorrow night, that would have a closer connection with this Crocker 8th grade class than yourself, and be able to represent this body. And I would like to propose to my colleagues that if they saw their way, we should support Karen and her family and allow her to give the commencement speech on the 14th.
It's a great
I think it would be a nice way to honor Karen's service on the board, and I think it's true she does have the strongest connection with this class, and we want to give her that opportunity to embarrass her daughters. They went off to high school, so I'm very much in favor of that idea.
All right. Are you going to be able to?
Yes, thank you.
We just decided we're going to still do this out of here.
Yes, well, thank you, it's very much appreciated. Thank you.
Don, did you have something else you were going to add to a board item?
No.
No? Okay.
Well, I just want to, again, thank Karen for her service. I thought we started working together, actually, competing with each other as candidates in the election, started seeing a lot of each other and they're at the time. But it's been a pleasure working with you, and we will miss you, and I hope to see you back here again.
Okay, item 12.0, public address concerning items in the closed session. James, this is your opportunity. Thank you for being patient with me.
Thank you again.
There's no amplification, it's just recording.
Thank you again, Dr. James Yan, 570 Pullman. I wanted to talk about the closed item regarding the superintendent evaluation. Let me start by using a well-known TV phrase, I believe coined by Mercedes. Perception is not always reality. However, with Superintendent Rainine's position, I think perception is reality. There is a sizable community member perception that he is divisive. Divisive in the sense that he tried to push through the assistant superintendent hiring, which many people in the community felt was not the right way to go. Divisive with the Sandy Finn reassignment from her 4th grade position to the transitional K level, which many people from South School parents came out to voice against. There's also a perception that there's been mismanagement at the leadership position, particularly at Crocker School, Middle School, with the overbearing leadership style, the constrictive leadership style that has forced many of our treasured and loved teachers to leave, which makes Hillsborough what it is today, the school system. There's also been the perception of the illusionary budget, school budget reports that being spoken of at these meetings that does not take into account of the caps, the ballooning caps that will come to fruition in a few years that will handicap this community and handcuff us for decades to come if we don't start addressing that issue as soon as possible. I will also say that a former school board trustee, Mary Ellen Benninger, she stated to many by saying that I hired Anthony Rainine, and I would do it again in a heartbeat. I will offer counter to that. You know, we now have a track record of where we were when the superintendent came in, and where we are at now. We've had merry-go-rounds with the principal, the assistant principal at Proctor at one point in time during when my kids were at the school. We've had many teachers leaving, which is a reflection of leadership. I will also say that there's also the perception of blossoming litigation going on because of mismanagement at the leadership position regarding school items and school issues, which could be just perception, but that's what's out there in the community. Yes, you know, I heard many of you here today speak what a wonderful job we are, but if we don't listen to the realistic inputs from community members, then we are bound for a big fall. I'd like to step back a little bit. Anthony Rainine came to our community years ago from his education was from a small college back east, came here, started out at West as an elementary school teacher, became the principal, and subsequently became the superintendent. You know, it was under the...
I'll give you a few over, but
Thank you.
not minutes,
Okay.
seconds.
All right. I will just finish. Our school, our community deserves better. We should have someone not on the job training, but we should have someone that is well seasoned. When you do your evaluation, just remember, can we do better? Must we do better?
Thank
Should
you.
we do better?
Thank you, James.
And the answer is yes, yes, yes.
Would like to address the board on items on the closed agenda. On the closed agenda items, yes, thank you, Karen. We need the.
Marin, Teresa. I'd like to address the item on the closed agenda regarding the superintendent evaluation. I heard some comments just now from Dr. Leanne that I consider to be, to a great extent,
What? To a great
To a
extent.
great extent,
Oh.
to a great extent, fact-free and content-free. I take issue with the tone, and I take issue with almost everything Dr. Neon had to say. I'm a little stunned that he can sit in school board meetings, meeting after meeting, and listen to the incredible things that are happening in this district. Hearing and listening to the presentations from children at each of our schools, the amazing projects that our teachers are undertaking, hearing what our principals and administrators are doing to support our district. The fact that our schools are number one in the API index for the last 4 years. The fact that the vast majority of parents in this district lend their financial support and their volunteer time to our district. And say what he just said now about our superintendent. Superintendent Renai, I think you work hard, you work tirelessly for our district. You're a great partner and collaborator with various constituents who are sitting in this room. And you are the superintendent that our district not only deserves, but sometimes I think better than we deserve. So I want to thank you for all of your hard work.
from the perspective of one Crocker administrator, but I just want to mention that the 2 years I was on the job as assistant principal at Crocker, I felt nothing but support from Superintendent Rainey, from Principal Catherine Mikas. For me, moving back to the classroom was all about making those connections with students like Matthew Yam a few years back, and Jill and Tim Dennis and Caroline Joseph and Janani and it had nothing to do with anything other than being on the front lines and working with children in an amazing school district under tremendous support. So I just want to mention that. Thank you.
Any other comments?
Once again, Dr. Pearl, I know I have 4 minutes, I'm gonna truncate it down to just half that. The success of any district is to allow all voices to be heard.
Is this about the
Yes,
superintendent's
it is about the
evaluation?
superintendent's evaluation. And also, in terms of whether there's a majority of voice or whether there's not a majority of voice, the bottom line is think out of the box. If we look at Superintendent Rainey's track record since 2009, in these last 5 years, to me, as one member of the community, and also just looking at the body language of all of us here, the leaning forward when we listen about evaluation process, it boils down to what is the core value in a superintendent. So in Yosemite of 2009, when I, as the class physician, and I'm just gonna take a 3 minute to ask, Lynn, is it confusing for you? I see that you were kind of
No, I'm
looking and
watching the
wondering.
time and.
And so if I could just speak it so that I can make
I'm
sure
just-
that I get this statement out. The test of character is whether we put oneself forward or do we put the needs of our students forward. When Anthony took the emergency key vehicle to come here for his evaluation interview, that to me is the core of what a person is. And I would like for all of us to think about that. Is the person who would take the keys to an emergency vehicle to come for an interview at a school board meeting for the superintendent appointment at the expense of the well-being, welfare of the kids at that particular field trip? Is that the character of a superintendent that we want? Thank you.
Any other comments? Great.
Everyone's entitled to their opinion, but they usually should have at least a modicum of a factual basis. And most of what I've heard tonight does not. And I'm just gonna go through it. The superintendent had nothing to do with the assistant superintendent proposal. The superintendent had nothing to do with pushing that proposal. That was a board initiative, a board proposal, and a board initially pushing that through and then listening to all the input and ultimately making our decision. Superintendent had nothing to do with that, factually inaccurate. The Sandy Finn assignment, I don't know how many meetings I've been to now where we've gone through the lines of authority in this district and the appropriate deference to authority of the site principal, not Mr. Rainey, factually inaccurate. Mismanagement and leadership at Crocker, overbearing, experienced teachers leaving. Unless you've talked to these teachers who are leaving like we have and he has, and they've talked to us and you learn why they're leaving, you can't make a statement that they're leaving because of your perception of mismanagement, because they're not. They're leaving for other reasons, personal choices. The cabs, I'm so sick of hearing about it. You're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. And we've said it how many times, and the experts have said it, and I'm tired of hearing about it. Mary Ellen Benninger said I hired Anthony Rainey, and I do it again in a heartbeat. There's only one other board member up here that hired Anthony Rainey, and I would do it again in a heartbeat. Thank you.
I would say, do you know much about
No,
CAS?
you're done.
You're done.
Karen?
I just wanted to once again thank Mr. Superintendent Rainey for his grace. I find it extraordinary that our community would make these kind of personal attacks that are totally unfounded. And once again, thank you for being at the table, and thank you for your hard work. I find myself in the odd position of agreeing with one small thing Dr. Yan said, which was, we have what you've accomplished in the last 6 years to judge you on, and I look forward to doing it.
Any other, I think it's public comment, close public comment since we're.
No, this is items on the closed session agenda. Have we
One more.
closed?
Is it okay?
No, we
Okay,
think we're closed.
okay.
We're closed. All right,
It's not a negative thing, I just,
No.
no, we're done.
Okay.
We're done. Okay, I adjourn this meeting